Tihi Māori ora. Thank you all. Now, just make sure I've got everything is juggling between my housekeeping notes, etc. So I'll declare the meeting open. Are there any apologies? I don't believe there are. Officers, any apologies?
We haven't received any.
No, okay, cool, thank you. Right. Announcements by the Mayor. I won't make any announcements today. Conflict of interest declarations, are there any? Again, I see none. Thank you. Confirmation of the minutes. The meeting held last week, 23rd of April 2020, having been circulated, taken as read and confirmed as an accurate record of the meeting. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Day. I'll put that. Now, if we can all go and do our, just make sure we're, we can do our voting bit. Couple more to go.
Councillor Ford. Unanimous carried.
Is that everyone there, Cyrus?
Unanimous, yes.
Good, thank you. Right. Okay, can you take the screen down again? Thank you very much. Right. Okay. Now, we now move to, there are no items not on the agenda. We now move to public participation. And look, welcome to all the public participants. It's good to have you all here. Now, I just want to check that we've got everybody here. And the difficulty I've got is I'm looking at the screen with everybody's names on it at the same time as trying to look at everybody else. So I've got Alicia Hall and Isabella Cawthorne, and then Tim Jones, Alania Ashby, Melanie Vortier, Eleanor, don't have a surname there, from Generation Zero, then John Prendergast and Cardinal John Dew and Joe Coughlin, then Mika from School Strike, James Dwyer from 350 Wellington, Ellen Blake from Living Streets, and Liz Mellish from the Federation of Maori Authorities, Whare Waka Wellington 10th Trust, and Palmerston North Reserve Trust for Mana Whenua. So we've managed to try and squeeze you all in within the hour that we've got set aside. So if we can start off with first person up, which is Alicia and Isabella. So welcome.
Kia ora koutou, Mayor Foster and councillors. What an extraordinary time this is. My kids are currently outside, so I can speak to you today as a parent, because these are really big decisions that are coming up that not only impact our immediate but their long-term future. What I really love about Wellington is our deep care for our natural environment and the collective action of our communities to restore our treasured wildlife to the region. I love how our communities work together on things like zero waste, food sharing, and eco-friendly initiatives. How we've all pulled together to help everyone through these levels of lockdown, and the awesome campaigns that are coming up to support our local businesses as levels reduce. The thing is, this crisis has also shown how vulnerable many are in our communities. And your officers and many of the organisations I can see speaking here today have excellent ideas on small to large scale projects that enhance the lives and well-being of our people, with the added benefit of enabling us to reduce our carbon footprint. And now is the time for unique investment. Accessible streets, for example, aren't a luxury or a nice to have, they're a necessity and seriously reducing our transport emissions. So we endorse any plan that allows us to build back better, that kickstarts our city's real transformation into a vibrant, equitable and accessible place to live, work and play in. We would love for you to aim high, regenerate and build in resilience, address inequities, to invest in people now and in generations. 10 to 20 years' time, when our kids look back, I really hope they look back with pride that this council made some bold decisions that not only helped and benefited people now, but invested in their long-term future. Over to you, Isabella.
Kia ora, Alicia. And councillors, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. Realise this is the annual plan, but it's, as Alicia has alluded, the first of many decisions that are going to come your way as Wellington seeks to not just rebuild, but to recover and regenerate from this unique time. And I'm here basically to say, given that it's abundantly clear that we should be restoring, regenerating, rather than just building back what we had before the pandemic, how should we pay for that and where can we get the money from? And as presented, we realise that this is the first of lots of decisions. The annual plan looks like it's missing a bit of a trick. It's heavily focused on rates and filling the gap of income that's been created by COVID. And it's really laudable to keep rates rises to a minimum, but we'd like to emphatically urge you to use Council's balance sheet really strongly to boost Wellington forward towards being the Wellington we've said over and over again for years that we want to be. Lower carbon, sustainable, economically diverse and vibrant, accessible, equitable. And the key financial player in this regeneration is government. It's that unique role that government has. And public debt, that big rubber band that stretches in times of crisis so everything can keep working and keep together. That's what we should be seeing really well used. We know that there are lots of problems with the local government funding system. And I have spent a brilliant time reading the Productivity Commission's review of local government funding and financing for my sins. Notwithstanding that, using council's debt ability is the responsible thing for councils to do right now. And Wellington is in a really quite good position. Borrowing's less than 10% of assets. Interest expenditure last year was under 5% of total. Yeah, even as non-rate income falls, council's going to continue to have a pretty respectable ability to service debt and to borrow more. And even as debt rises, borrowing costs right now are extraordinarily low. The Reserve Bank is buying local government bonds. It is a really good time for council in its healthy position to be using that balance sheet. Now, I'll leave a buffer for black swans. And yes, this, using more debt will inch us closer to
Isabella,
the prospect.
you've got about half a minute.
Yep, inch us closer to the prospect of a credit rating downgrade, and it is still the right response. Roll up those sleeves, borrow strongly now, especially in the LTP, to fund projects and activities that will regenerate Wellington and build us back better. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's beautiful timing. There's time for one very quick question if somebody's got one. Don't see any. Okay, look, thank you both, Alicia and Isabella. Really appreciate seeing you there, and you just have to watch and see what we do. Next, Tim.
Hello, Koto.
Welcome.
My name is Tim Jones. I've lived in Wellington since 1993 and I'm a resident of Mount Victoria. I'm a Wellington ratepayer and a parent. Wellington faces massive challenges and has a massive opportunity. That opportunity is to create a city that is more resilient in the face of present and future challenges, including both COVID-19 recovery and climate change. Let's not forget, the risks posed by climate change haven't gone away. If we needed a reminder, the massive waves that battered Orfero Bay 2 weeks ago certainly provided one. The effects of COVID-19 on Wellingtonians have been severe, but now Council has an opportunity to meet the needs of social renewal, equity, environmental protection, climate justice and job creation by adopting measures that will start us on the path to transformative change. This is not a time for Council to be timid. It's time for Council to acknowledge that the world has changed. It's time to use the annual plan process to begin to take the necessary steps to build for the future including the future of young people like my son. And Wellington City has commitments to keep. Under Te Tiriti o Waitangi, in relation to its 29 declaration of a climate and ecological emergency, and under Te Atakura First to Zero, with its commitment to front-load emissions reductions between now and 2030, which is the really crucial time to do that. As the previous speakers acknowledged, the annual plan is a starting point in this process, but it's an important starting point. So through the annual plan and onwards into the development of the long-term plan, it's time to start meeting those commitments. And I would echo Isabella's point that if that means borrowing in the current environment, then that's what we need to do to get things done. And by goodness, if we're going to borrow, it's a good time to do it. We need not just to build back, but to build back better and build back stronger. I would like to see the annual plan include measures that help us do that. For instance, measures that improve the city's resilience to natural disasters and climate change, that begin the process of implementing Te Atakura First to Zero. Of course, I realise the long-term plan's also going to have a very important role there, but it can start right now if the right measures are taken in respect to the annual plan. We need to focus on regenerating our natural ecosystems, and we need to change our approach to waste management. We didn't just declare a climate emergency last year, we declared a climate and ecological emergency. That means that a focus on preserving and enhancing our natural environment and our biodiversity is really important. Wellington's the creative capital. Do we ever need creativity right now? Let's have a plan that enables Wellingtonians to use their creativity in the arts, in the sciences, and many other sectors to contribute to the future of the city and provide work by doing so in all sorts of ways. So councillors, this is your moment to make a real difference to the future of the city and demonstrate leadership to your constituents, your future constituents, and the rest of Aotearoa. I urge you to take this opportunity.
Thank you, Tim. Very eloquent. Has anybody got any questions? I've got about a 3/4 minute. Oh, sorry. No, don't see any questions. Okay, thank you, Councillor Rush.
Tim, what's your biggest concern in regards to climate change? Is it sea level rise? Is it heavy rainfall? What is it?
Well, it's probably not a very helpful answer, Sean, but I'm going to say all of it. We face a whole range of risks here. Sea level rise is something that we have to prepare for because it affects the decisions we make today will intersect with sea level rise in terms of where infrastructure and housing is around our city. Flooding is a real risk for us, perhaps because I live in Mount Victoria and the town belt isn't too far from me. I'm also very aware of fire as a risk in our city and also in our region. So I don't think picking one is the right approach. I think we need to look at the whole picture and take action to reduce our emissions and to mitigate those risks.
Thanks.
Tim, thank you very much. Really appreciate that and very eloquently put. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alana, welcome. I did see you there somewhere. Welcome. Oh, we've got a screen to share. Okay, right. Welcome.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you. Mayor Foster and councillors, he mihi nui ki te komiti kaunahera o Pōneke. Greetings. We're te reo o ngā tangata, the people speak. There's 5 others here with me and tautoko. So we'll release a lot of bandwidth when this one's over. First, we want to congratulate the council on your continuity of engagement through this pandemic. It's flipping awesome. Thank you. Second, we offer strong support for your governance role, especially in supporting the activities that enable democratic decision making. Next slide, please. And then next slide, please. Or am I controlling it?
I don't know.
Is Sean still there?
Sorry.
Is he controlling the slides?
I've pressed next slide, but there's a bit of delay with Zoom. So if just
I'll add a little bit of time for that one, Alana.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
is it on the next slide now?
No, hasn't
I
moved.
can't see it. I can continue because
Yep,
I've
yes.
got it back up here. No, and
Keep
next
going.
slide again, please, Sean. Thank you. Hey, so with COVID in our city being changed by climate, councillor decision making and budgeting will become tougher and tougher. We know that. We've seen it now with the new annual plan, the LTP trade-offs. It's already our new normal. To meet these new challenges and keep up with our people, we believe that we need to just tweak our democratic toolkit. This is what we're putting forward, and increase the use of our deliberative processes. And that people's response in the city has been amazing. We've understood the seriousness of this pandemic, and we've shown that we've been willing to be part of a rapid and serious change. Thousands of us filled Wellington streets last September to support School Strike for Climate and the future of our children. We believe that our response, our energy and commitment in the people across the city wards for these crises needs to be maintained and channeled with the council. We need to strengthen our engagement toolkit to match. That's what we're saying. Just keep up with the people. And we are proposing that we do this through a greater use of deliberative democratic process. Next slide, please, Sean. Thank you. Hey, let Wellingtonians engage on the big issues that we face, where emotions run high, views are divided, significant trade-offs and investment is needed. I'm sure we can all think of plenty of issues that meet those criteria. Let us create a better and wider set of solution options for council to decide upon. Issues such as a Whero Bay, low carbon energy and transport, urban design, COVID recovery in the longer term, because COVID's going to come back around, I swear, it's on a roundabout. We believe that deliberative processes such as an Aotearoa Assembly or a jury for Wellington City would help the council and the people of Wellington do it better and do it together. We're asking council today to use the consultation budgets in the annual plan and the planning processes for the LTP over the next few months to include the development of a deliberative democracy channel in partnership with mana whenua, groups like ourselves in the wider community. Use a Whero Bay as a focus for this design, a design to respond to both the COVID recovery and the climate crisis that's changing our city already. And we took all those speakers before us, without trading off against each other. Next slide, please, Sean. Alrighty, so what is deliberative democracy processes? Well, it's for complex issues. It's not just for anything. It's for complex issues. It's where mana whenua and local people are selected and trained in deliberation, where Te Tiriti can be honoured through identifying common values, recognising Māori and Pākehā spheres of influence, and mana whenua kaitiaki over this land. The group can be assured to represent business, tourists, ratepayers, renters, new immigrants, and there will be many of those with climate change, families, people who live and work and visit Wellington, all aspects of our society, abled and disabled, old and young. They're informed by and interact with professionals from community, mātauranga Māori and public submissions. They're facilitated to see each other's viewpoints and identify common values, even when they've got wildly different strategies for them. They help frame good questions. Now, better questions come from diverse viewpoints. We know this. Better questions result in better and wider solution options for the council to decide upon. Timeframes can be flexible, experts are live streamed, outcomes are transparent, the media and the public journey alongside, so that public support or their concerns are seen early and often, and it's throughout the city. Deliberative processes can move a whole city, a whole region. Karakia can move a whole country if it can help bring forward abortion legislation change in a country with as embedded faith as Ireland. Guys, limit. Next slide, please, Sean.
Alana, can I get you almost done?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
I'm just going to leave you with a slide with a quote from South Australia, which uses citizens' juries regularly to decide upon things like what to do with nuclear waste and how can all road users share the roads safely. And the last slide, Sean, please, one last slide. One of our own, Makara Beach Resilience Project. This is not a new thing. We've started doing it already. All we're asking is that council develop a process, a system change that we can use for post-COVID recovery into the future and climate change as a system change for Wellington to lead with. Thank you.
Alana, thank you very much for that. It's very exciting, and we'll look forward very much to talking some more about what we can do in response to this.
Kia ora.
Kia ora. Okay, who's next up? Melanie, welcome.
Thank you, kia ora everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. First, I wanted to toko what all the previous participants have said. I agree wholeheartedly, and there will probably be some pretty similar themes in what I'm about to say. And I also want to say thank you to councillors who have been prioritising social, environmental and cultural projects through this time. My main thing I just want to say is I encourage you to go further with that and really use this time to make ambitious, innovative and transformational change. There is a huge amount of public appetite for using this opportunity to make some really fundamental changes. There are several petitions and open letters from multiple organisations calling for a reimagined society, which I'm sure you're aware of, but happy to link you if not. There is a real need to act quickly before we slip back into what we used to call normal. I think there is more to be done, particularly in terms of accessibility around the city. Many cities around the world, including Auckland and Nelson, have already implemented measures to make the city safer and more accessible for walking and cycling. Wellington needs to do the same. In the last couple of days, as we've moved into level 3 and cars have come back even a bit, I've been really surprised as to how noisy it's been, how much worse it feels to breathe the air, and how, again, I feel like as a pedestrian, I have less right to space than cars do. While people are still accustomed to having quiet and clean streets, this is the time to move that into lasting policy or just slip back into being a car-centric city again. In level 4, I found when I was out walking, often the only way to pass people was for one of us to go out onto the road. This is obviously not ideal going forward and not safe, and needs to be given proactive attention before any accidents happen. This especially needs to be implemented in consultation with people with disabilities. This is a chance to take priority away from cars and give it back to people and bring about all the benefits that come with that. Huge health benefits, lower emissions, more vibrant and connected communities. There is years worth of research on the benefits of active transport, and now is the time to put it into practice. That means, depending on the context and space limitations of each street, wider footpaths, bike lanes, lower speed limits and multi-use zones. Even better would be to make areas of the city car-free, as has been suggested for years in terms of the Golden Mile, and has been implemented successfully in cities around the world. For instance, Ljubljana in Slovenia has had a car-free city centre for over a decade, with the only vehicles allowed to enter carrying parents with infants or elderly or disabled people who get free access in electric taxis. You have the Te Atakura First to Zero plan, as Tim mentioned before, which quotes in the blueprint, a key outcome of our next 10 years needs to be a significant shift away from moving about in petrol-driven cars. This is the opportunity to make real headway toward that. While people aren't flying and are driving considerably less, there is an opportunity to normalize those behaviors and offer attractive, alternative, low emission options. Going back to pre-COVID habits of driving and flying would be a huge step backward when this is a time that could really gain ground on climate ambitions. I also want to remind you that 2 years ago, the IPCC said we had 12 years to make unprecedented societal change. Now that is 10 years, and emissions have continued to rise over that time. And that should be foremost in all of our minds in any decision making and future planning. I encourage you to be really ambitious, innovative, and transformational in every way. For instance, this would be an awesome time to really enact true T2DT partnership, building back in a way that embraces Māori values, as well as implement real civic engagement, as Elena was just talking about before, with also increased transparency, consultation, and participatory democracy. Also things like participatory budgeting would be an awesome way to engage the community and bring us all along with you. This is a time that we need strong and visionary leadership, and I just want to reiterate, be bold, and there are a ton of us out here who will back you up and support you in making transformational change.
Melanie, thank you. Sorry, it was my muting myself again. I've got the time for about a question or so. Has anybody got a question for Melanie? All right, Nicola, Councillor Young.
Melanie, thank you. Can you just tell me, I missed it. You said, is it Ljubljana has been, I couldn't quite, I was thinking of Ljubljanka, but that's the big prison in Moscow, and you weren't talking about that.
Ljubljana in Slovenia. Yeah,
right, thank you. That's
free, and it's won awards for sustainability and for safety.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Anybody else? Don't see anyone. Melanie, thank you very much. Really appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yep. So that was just a thumbs up rather than rather than a question. Thanks, Councillor Matthews. Right. Thank you. Eleanor. It's Eleanor. Hi, Eleanor. Right. Welcome. Nice to have you here.
Kia ora koutou, can you hear me?
Well, that doesn't sound like Eleanor. That's Scott.
Yeah,
Hello,
I'm
Scott.
So I'll be here with Eleanor.
Right. Where you go.
Kia ora koutou. Hello, Mayor Foster and councillors. As you've just heard, my name's Scott and I'm joined by Eleanor today. Together, we're here on behalf of Gen Zero Wellington. We want to thank you for the opportunity to remind you all why and how making the annual plan climate friendly is so important, especially in light of COVID-19. Next slide, please.
I have pressed the next slide, but it's going to take a couple of seconds, so I should be there.
That's okay. We'll just add that little bit to the time.
Is this the correct one?
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, that's great. So really quickly, we'll just run through who we are. Gen Zero is a non-partisan youth-led climate organisation that champions solutions towards a carbon neutral Aotearoa. We have national campaigns, but also work in major centres across the country, as you can see on the current slide. Thanks. Next slide. Next slide is around our vision. So the council has the privilege of deciding how Wellington will look post-COVID-19 through the annual plan. It's not just time to rebuild, it's time to renew and refocus how we live. It's our vision at Generation Zero that we come together to create a new normal. All know it looks like a zero carbon Wellington city that is resilient, connected and livable for current and future generations to enjoy. Next slide, please. When we emailed you councillors a few weeks ago in regard to COVID-19 recovery, we asked you to remember some key principles when making crucial decisions for our city. In light of the annual plan discussions today, we'd like to just run through them again really quickly. The first is alignment with central and local government commitments, the Zero Carbon Act and Te Ata Kura. The second is prioritising low emission transport and supporting sustainable urban transport. The third is upholding te tiriti and community voices. And the fourth is providing a green transition through the COVID-19 recovery. Next slide, please. Awesome. I'd just like to hand over to Eleanor. Thanks, Eleanor.
Kia ora, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes. Yeah.
Sweet.
Yes.
So we want to see immediate action as well as a strong plan. And total tautoko to Mel's comments, we've seen cities leap into action around the world, but also in New Zealand, to implement temporary infrastructure to help people with social distancing. Nelson is widening its footpaths to help with social distancing. Why hasn't Wellington? We talk about being the most walkable city in New Zealand, and we'd like to know why we've been so slow to seize this opportunity. Next slide, please. Auckland is about to
complete 17 kilometres of pop-up bike lanes to keep people safe. And we haven't seen any pop-up in Wellington. In the draft annual plan you're debating today, it says we have to wait until 2028 for our permanent bike lanes to be completed. That's so far away, especially considering what Melanie was saying earlier about what short time we had to make transformational change. Wellington should have used the level 4 situation as an opportunity to take back the streets while they were empty and while there was support. In level 3, you can already see the start of the return to business as usual. The streets are becoming full with cars again, and as Melanie was saying, it doesn't feel as safe as it did a couple of weeks ago. We're running out of time to implement these changes. Next slide, please. At Generation Zero, we firmly believe that now is the time for leadership. We've always seen Wellington has so many big ideas, but there's been historically very little follow through. Now is the time to invest through the annual plan. Next slide, please. And we completely agree with what was said earlier, that now is the time to be borrowing to invest in the future. It's a perfect time. Either way, someone is going to be borrowing in this situation, and if it's not the council, it's going to be members of our community. And Wellington City Council has the credit rating and the balance sheet that it needs to take on that debt. Our communities don't. We're asking that you please don't defer the environmental and social debt to future generations. Next slide, please. We'd like to see investment in a climate-friendly recovery, and we're absolutely here to back you up. You have the support from Wellington to do this. We want to see investment in transport, and we want to see a network of quality walking, cycling, and public transport options. We'd like to see immediate temporary active transport routes, but we'd also
Eleanor,
like—
you've got about half a minute left, Eleanor.
Yep, we'd like rapid transit and active transport brought forward. We'd like housing and building improvements for our homes and buildings to be energy efficient, healthy, and safe. We want major investment in the water infrastructure. Our parks and recreation and social infrastructure would like to heal the social fabric of Wellington during this recovery. And we'd also like to see investment in conservation and biodiversity through green spaces and native bush. Next slide, please. And that's us.
Thank you very much, and well timed. Don't see any questions here, but thank you. Really appreciate that. Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Eleanor. Okay. Now we can change tack a little bit. Do we have John Dew and John Prendergast there, and Joe Coughlin?
Sorry, Mayor Foster, they won't be attending today.
Oh, they're not attending. Okay,
no,
sorry.
No,
we'll
listen to them another time. Thank you.
Right, okay, that's fine. Okay, well, that takes us to Mika. I did see Mika on there before.
Kia ora.
School strike. Kia ora. Welcome.
Micah, but I appreciate it.
Oh, sorry, Micah.
Oh, yeah, that's all right. Yeah, as said, my name's Micah. I'm 16, and I am happy to be representing School Strike for Climate today. I just like to tautoko what all of the public participants have said beforehand in criticizing just the annual plan currently, but also encouraging more radical funding and investment into more active climate policy. As said, climate change has to be one of the biggest problems facing our generation and the future generations. I do want to acknowledge that actually one of the biggest problems when dealing with climate change and coming to on our journey to become a zero carbon capital is actually public transport. I believe in the Wellington City Council Climate Change Action Plan for 2016 to 2018, it was estimated that out of Wellington's over 1 million tons of CO2, 90% of it was produced in the transport and stationary energy sectors. With this in mind, it's fair to assume that transport is one of the biggest challenges we face in our journey to, as I said before, become a carbon neutral capital. Public transport is incredibly crucial in our fight against climate change. However, it's also efficient economically speaking. In a New Zealand Transport Agency article published in 2013, it stated that public transport increases worker productivity between 3% and 23% over other modes of transport such as cars. However, I know that I'm preaching to the choir here. I believe that everyone in this room does want public transport to be more heavily funded. I know that you do, Mayor. So as council members, it should be your #1 priority to provide a safe and stable environment for Wellingtonians to thrive, both socially and economically. However, currently that is not being met, far from it. So Metlink's Transport Committee Chairperson Roger Blakely said that their plan for electrification of the public transport vehicle fleet would extend to a total of 100 electric buses by June 2023. And as said before by, I believe it was Eleanor, in the current annual plan that you will be debating later on, we will have to wait until 2028 until we get permanent bike lanes. That is not fast enough. We are waiting to have a more sustainable city, to have a more sustainable environment. However, as the IPCC report said, we only have 10 years left, and waiting until 2028 to get bike lanes is not efficient enough. Currently, 54% of Greater Wellington's carbon emissions come from Metlink's public transport bus fleets. As the council and a partner of Metlink, you have the power to push financial incentivization of the decarbonisation of public transport. That needs to be a very big priority in the annual plan. So I urge you, put more funding into our public transport, incentivize more public usage through lowering fares, and use your power to support Metlink and their workers. This means, supporting their strikes. This means actually advocating and working with Metlink as your partner to lower fares for public transport and make sure that the decarbonisation of the current public transport in Wellington happens faster than we are already estimating it to be. Thank you.
Micah, thank you very much. I've got one question from Councillor Paul, but just before I do, have you gone and spoken to Greater Wellington about this? Because they're the ones who actually run the public transport system and have
all right.
Metlink belongs to them.
School Strike does have that on the side, which we are currently doing. But,
excellent.
Yeah,
I would encourage you to go and do that.
Yeah.
Councillor Paul.
Tēnā koe, Micah. Thank you so much for that kōrero. I think we're all really impressed with how much knowledge you have and how bright and intelligent you are. So thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. I just wanted to ask, how can we do better to engage with people who might still be in school? Not implying you are, because I wouldn't be surprised if you're at uni already. But how can we do better to engage with high schools and younger people?
I think the best way to engage with people my age would actually be, as said before, to have more democratic processes in the way that policy is made and the way that discussions are held by the council. So doing things such as hosting these kind of meetings, but instead of it just being for members of the public to join, it's especially targeted towards people my age and saying, actually, if you're in high school, if you're in university, please come along to this because we want to know your opinions.
Thank you very much, Mika. Really appreciate it.
No problem.
Thank you.
Question?
No, Councillor Rush, time has now expired, I'm sorry. I've got James Dwyer next from 350 Wellington. There's James. Oh, there. So you there? Yep, cool. Welcome. Nice to have you here.
Kia ora. Tēnā koutou katoa, tuatahi ngā mihi ki te kaunihera o pōneki, me ngā tangata kua hui mai nei tēnei ahi. Ko James Dwyer tōku ingoa, me ko Paddy Geddes tēnei, ka kōrero mātou mō te rōpū 350 pōneki. Kia ora koutou. My name is James Dwyer and Paddy Geddes, who's here as well. We're volunteers with, and today I speak on behalf of Wellington 350. 350 Wellington, we are the arm of 350, the Wellington arm of 350 Aotearoa, whose mission it is to strengthen climate action in communities across New Zealand. We very much tautoko what has already been said by the other participants. We consider the choices we make today will impact our society, economy, health and climate for decades to come. In a COVID-19 world, we believe we can shape Aotearoa's post-pandemic recovery to promote a vision for a just, sustainable and equitable future for the planet and its people. Now, we know the Council will be considering its annual plan in the upcoming months and that you are also developing an economic recovery plan. In this regard, we advocate for a just recovery. And that just recovery should address the following principles. Number 1, put people's health and human rights first with no exceptions. Number 2, honour Te Tiriti through partnerships with Māori in all decision making. Number 3, take action to stop climate change and build a just and sustainable future for all. Number 4, support workers and communities and create secure jobs and livable incomes for all. Number 5, build a resilient economy centred on well-being for all people, where everyone contributes their fair share of tax to build a society we want. And lastly, number 6, ensure transparency and allow for democratic scrutiny in all decision making. That's why we're here today. So 350 Wellington intends to engage with your processes going forward on this basis. Thanks for enabling us to be here. Paddy and I welcome any questions. Ngā mihi nui kia koutou.
James and Paddy, thank you very much. Are there any questions? Don't see any. I think you've obviously been very, very clear. Oh no, Councillor Foon. Thank you. There you go, Councillor Foon.
Tēnā koe, James. It was really good to hear from you. In your view, what is the one thing we could do to engage you in to be more transparent in our democratic processes?
Kia ora, Loria Foon. Thanks for that. Tēnā koe. I guess in my view, that's continuing processes like this. I think this is really good that, you know, consistent, genuinely engaging processes that we can engage with on an ongoing basis. Paddy, did you have anything to add to that?
No, I just think the consideration of those deliberative decision-making ideas would be worth. Yeah, we would support that, I believe.
Thank you.
Thank you. Perfect.
Thank you, really appreciate that. Thank you both very much for coming along, and we really appreciated what you had to say.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Kia ora. Ellen
Blake, representing Living Streets. Ellen, welcome. Here you are.
Thank you. Kia ora.
Oh, there you are. Right. We got to see where you are in the screen, in the pantheon of people there.
There's a lot.
Welcome.
This is a great way to hold meetings. I think a lot more people have engaged since you've been using Zoom. So just in relation to the
it's very carbon efficient too.
Yes. I just wanted to say a few things about the annual plan and what you should do. And the main one is be bold. I wanted to talk about the money, and I wanted to talk, because we are a pedestrian advocacy group, about walking opportunities, or what I call destinations. So on the money side, it's I was a bit disappointed to see that there wasn't a rates option for a 9% increase in rates, because that was what was originally planned, and that's what we would like to see, more spending, being bold going forwards with the opportunities that has occurred. So it's a bit disappointed to see that. And hopefully people will submit on that. I think there's some good processes in place in Wellington for rates relief if people need it and are struggling. So please be bolder, please spend, please borrow to get us to where we want to go. And where we want to go is the vision that we've had for Wellington for a long time, which includes a compact, walkable city and great places to walk in the suburbs as well. So on thinking about COVID-19, and I'd like to tautoko Melanie about the excellent description of what it's been like to walk around under level 4 and the change to what it's now with too much traffic, and also to Micah, just to talking about where we need to go. But thinking about destinations, there's quite a lot in the annual plan about supporting people being able to walk and go to interesting destinations, such as you know, the play area at the Basin Reserve is going to be really important for children. For the laneways is a great project for connecting things, and ending homelessness was an improvement on our footpaths as well. I think it's really important that some of these projects have wider implications. I guess the City Library, I was a bit disappointed to see that there wasn't a lot in what I've seen so far anyway about getting our library back, because that is one of the key destinations in Wellington that people use. And if we think about who's had the biggest impact under COVID-19, I'd say older people and probably disabled people. And the City Library is such an important place for them to go. So please put some more effort into getting some of those places up and running. And things like the Nio Gorge, it's good to see that some work's happening there. The footpath up the Nio Gorge is abysmal, and it really needs to be a higher priority than it has been. I'm really interested to see what's going to happen in Karakia. I think there's a lot of work that needs to go on there. Another thing that we've seen under COVID-19 is that people are walking locally, and not only on the footpaths, but in our parks. And so I'm a bit disappointed to see the annual plan hasn't put a focus on parks. There's a lot of people in our parks at the moment. And one of the big gaps in our park network has been that there isn't enough accessible park places, green space for people who have mobility issues and other issues. And there's a lot of work that could happen in that area. And it's all about our vision for Wellington. We need to spend money for what our vision is, not for for easy to do things. I think it's really important to put the money where it's going to count. One opportunity might be that there could be arts activity that could happen in the parks. So arts in the parks could be a really cool thing that Wellington could do. As I think Generation Zero mentioned, Nelson and Auckland are pipping us at the post on some of the walking improvements on footpaths, wider footpaths and slower city centres. So I think we could do arts in the parks. That's really all I wanted to say. Please think about the money, think about destinations as a really important response to COVID-19 and serve us well in the future. Please be bold. Ngā mihi nui. Thank you.
Kia ora, Ellen. Thank you very much. Is there any questions there for Ellen? Councillor Foon again.
I was waving at Ellen.
Oh, was that a wave? Is it? Sorry, you just put a big hand up there. I didn't know whether that...
But since you picked me, Ellen, just in your experience over COVID, where have you experienced the most traffic, the walking traffic, and where are we missing a good linked pathway?
Well, under level 4, I could only walk locally. So I live around Mount Vic, so I've walked around here. And what I found was everybody has to walk on the road because there's not enough room on the footpath. And so the footpaths aren't big enough. And I expect that will be exactly the same in the inner city and all the inner city suburbs. And I'm pretty sure it will be the same in other suburbs as well.
Right.
Okay, I will take the deputy mayor's question too, seeing
Hi, Ellen. Look, it's fascinating to hear about Nio Gorge and those other parts of the city that perhaps some of us don't get to very often. How do we best prioritise the many walking projects that we could invest in, and what would you suggest?
I think for walking, everybody walks, so it's going to benefit everybody. You want to focus on children, older people and disabled people, making sure it works well for them. Anything works well for them, it will work well for everybody else. Some of the things that will have the biggest impact, particularly at the moment, is making intersections better, so we don't have to wait for a long time to cross the road. Older people, children and disabled people will always wait for the traffic lights, so make the traffic lights work. Let's not have push big buttons anymore. We shouldn't have to push the button to get across the road. So, and then some of the if we want more people to get back to work in central Wellington, which is what's going to happen, we're going to need wider footpaths on some of those very, very busy connecting routes, like Featherston Street and Cuba Street, for instance. They're too narrow now. They're going to be way too narrow when people, are trying to keep their 2 metre distance. And it looks like we want to do that into the future. We want to make it easy for people. So those are places that people already are finding it's tight. So let's see if we can make those ones better. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ellen. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you all.
Kia ora.
Thanks.
And that takes us to our final public participant, Liz. Tēnā koe, welcome. Lovely to see you.
Kia ora, Andy. Thank
Kia ora.
you. Kia ora koutou. I won't go into a big explanation about who I am. I think most of you know very well who I am. But what I will say, what an amazing group of young people talking to you today. That's pretty fantastic and a little bit exciting. But I want to talk more broadly about people and the problem we've now got with COVID-19 and what is looming very fast for us, and particularly for Māori and particularly for Pacific Island people. We are already the bad demographic, and I really want to see Council consider how we do job creation, how we improve housing, and how we improve business. Because if we haven't got a job, and looking at the figures today that have come out, there will be, what, 160 billion people in the world unemployed. So we are looking down the gun of some pretty awful things for people. And so my reason for coming on here today really is to talk about that. As you know, I'm the chairman of Te Raukura the Whariwaka. We employ 120 people. 60% of them are Māori, 20% of them are Pacific Island, and the other 20% are Ngā iwi katoa. As a result of COVID-19, we had to close the door. We are preparing to open tomorrow. But of course, we've had to reduce the staff. Now, those are the things that concern me, that I am hoping to see Council address within the annual plan. And I note that the economic development ratio has dropped by 2%. And I suspect that's a backward step and we should actually move the other way. So that's one of my pleas to you as councillors. I also want to note that many of those bright young people talked about te tiriti. But frankly, nobody talks to us about the treaty, and I am concerned that the council needs to look wider. As you know, currently you only work with 2 iwi authorities, and that absolutely needs to be broadened to understand actually what's going on for Māori within the city. And we have obviously Te Raukura, we have Wellington Teams, we have Palmerston North Māori Reserve Trust. We are the headquarters for the Federation of Māori Authorities, which is a nationwide organisation that has over 100 in its membership, who are horticulturalists, who are dairy farmers, who are fishermen, who are foresters, who are beef and lamb growers, and who are doing innovative things in regenerative farming. And I doubt that any of you are aware of that at all. And so there is some work to be done, and I was rather pleased to be able to come into this hui. And I know in your annual plan, you say you'll consult with Māori and with mana whenua after the plan's written. And actually that's not good enough. And so I will say to you, if you are going to talk about the treaty, if you are going to give value to those people that were here when the New Zealand Company arrived in 1839, we need to be at the beginning of the process and not at the end. And so I want to encourage you to think seriously about housing. I want to encourage you to think seriously about creating opportunities for business to thrive. I am concerned that places like David Jones may well close, and that's been widely discussed in the business community. That's on our famous Lambton Quay. We have to be better about ensuring that businesses survive. Many are not going to, and I note that Christchurch, I think 6 restaurants have closed today. This is scary stuff. And whilst we might be very excited about having wider walking streets, and I absolutely applaud that because I'm a walker, but it's no use having that if you haven't got people to walk on it. So thinking seriously about investing in the people is very, very important. I make one other point. Māori, we need to get that, let's get Wellington moving. One of the key things, the huge disappointment in not getting a bridge alongside the Basin Reserve is the impact on us in our health. The tertiary hospital for the whole of the Wellington region is in Wellington. Access to it for Māori and Pacific Island people is difficult. And we're the ones driving in cars because we don't go to the hospital on our own. We don't hop on a bus or a bicycle. We don't own a bicycle. We go in a car with 6 other people. And so that broader thinking and understanding in that treaty relationship of the impact you people have for us is really important. So I'm not going to drag on. I do particularly want to see us have events managed well. Andy, Matariki, Waitangi Day, they're standouts for Wellington. Those events create opportunities for work. I'm concerned about the universities. I'm concerned that we're not going to be able to have international students. That will have a huge impact on the city. I want to understand through your annual plan and your process what you're doing about all of those things. Imagine if Victoria University has no students. Our Māori population at Victoria has dropped. Massey University, also based in the city, and our partner in one of the best buildings in Aotearoa, is looking to do much, much more distance learning. All of this has an impact on the well-being of the city and what happens in the future for our young people. And so those are just some key things I want to raise with you that you really do consider. How we can help, how Māori business can help maintain this capital city and make it business friendly. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Liz. Thank you very much. We really appreciate what you had to say. Thank you. That,
My pleasure.
no, Councillor Rush, we have gone beyond time. I'd let Liz go a little bit longer.
Oh, sorry.
So, yeah. No, it's okay, Liz. Yeah, I was sort of a bit betwixt and between in terms of how we manage that one. Councillor Rush, we'll take that one question then. Where you go.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. Liz, thanks so much for that really excellent summary. But very quickly, we have been talking about accelerating projects and Let's Get Wellington Moving. Would you support getting on with the extension of the State Highway 1?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a quick question, quick answer. Right, Liz, thank you very much. We really appreciate that. You feel welcome to stay or to watch on the online. Either way, we'll be fine.
Thank you, Andy. I'm sorry, I'm into another Zoom.
I understand. We're all zooming all over the place.
Do you know we call them Zooey, which is a Zoom hooey?
Oh well, that'll do. That's just fine. That's good stuff. Thank you very much. Lovely to see you.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you. So, councillors, that completes the public participation. We've got one more thing which we need to do in terms of the procedures, and that is to suspend the 2 standing orders suspended every other time, unless people are desperately keen to stand up every time they speak. But I suspect the answer is no. So I'm going to move that we suspend the same 2 standing orders, which I think is 16.7, sorry, 16.5 and 27.7. So I'm going to move that, seconded by Councillor Fitzsimons. Thank you. If we can all vote on that, please.
That's unanimous.
That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, I think, Cyrus, I'm now at the point where I can, what have I just done? I think I'm now at the point where I can introduce the paper. So look, councillors and audience and officers, gives me great pleasure to introduce the paper. This is a slightly unique way of doing this. I don't think, well, certainly I can definitely say that there has never been another annual plan introduced in Wellington City's history through Zoom. And we've certainly been through a different process than we would have been before. We were about to, of course, to launch into an annual plan process when we were just about to go into the COVID situation. Obviously, we looked at that and said, no, we can't do that. Obviously, the environment is changing so much, we have to be responsive to that, and we have been responsive to that. I think it was Alan Blake who said, you encourage us actually to spend more money in terms of the rating level. We started out with a higher level, and of course we've had a lot of pushback to say go to something lower than that, which we've done, and some of that I'll go through in just a moment. But I think what I want to do is to start off by saying, look, we are in the midst of what is the greatest single disruption, the greatest single crisis, I think, that the world economy and society has faced. It's certainly in terms of a short space of time since the Second World War. And together as New Zealanders and together as Wellingtonians, we have navigated our way through that unprecedented lockdown. We've had to give up a lot of our freedoms to get through that process. And I think New Zealanders and Wellingtonians, possibly particularly, have done a spectacular job in responding to that crisis and in trying to put us in a place where we can actually come out the other side having beaten the health crisis. Now, clearly we have a long way yet to go, but at least we are now out of the lockdown situation and into a new level 3. And hopefully we will be able to continue to press on to a level which starts our economy getting back up and running again at level 2 and then at level 1. I want to, in saying this and starting this off, I want to thank our wonderful professional and dedicated staff and management. I think you have been absolutely spectacular through this period of time. You've reoriented the organisation once to get into lockdown, and you are now reorienting it again to come out of lockdown. And so I really want to thank you for that. You've kept our democratic process functioning, not just with these official Zoom meetings, but many other conversations, much other kōrero besides. So thank you very much for that. And you have been, even more significantly, you've been able to continue providing the critical services that we've needed during the lockdown period, and also continuing to repair critical infrastructure, which I think has been spectacular, and that's been very much appreciated. You've responded to storms, you've kept and helped us keep the community informed, and we have been engaging significantly with a whole range of different sectors, whether it's the interfacing with the welfare sector, whether it is who've been looking after the people who are most challenged anyway, most vulnerable in our community, but also now those who are finding that life has got a lot tougher in this situation and have needed extra help. And so we've been working very closely with all those welfare organisations. Likewise, we've been working very closely with the business sector, the arts sector, the event sector, the retail sector, the economic sector, in terms of how we come through this and how we come out the other side. So I just want to again thank you all, councillors as well, for the part you played in that, and thank you to the organisation, all our wonderful staff and management. What we're looking to in the future, so we've obviously the key bit is recovery. So we have a lot of excellent creative work being done with the relevant sectors to support our business and arts and events communities. And I think the key bit is we have the best central city in the country, and we need to make sure it stays that way. We need to get it to recover again. We need to get the heart beating again. And so it's to draw people back into our city over a period of time. It'll be step by step, and to do that in a way which is safe. And a lot of thought and a lot of work is going on into that. And I certainly take on board the comments that Liz has made about the situation that we face ourselves, We've also been doing a lot of long-term thinking about the way a post-COVID world may differ from the pre-COVID world. And I guess that's one of the things that a lot of our submitters have asked us to think about. And we've also been thinking about promoting some of the big projects which are going to help set us up for that post-COVID world. We put an extensive package to government of shovel-ready job-creating projects, which will have long-term benefits, especially in resilience, and I think many of them in the transformative sustainability area that many of our submitters today have talked about. Now, this is a budget. Some people I think have seen this as the place we do everything. It's not the place we do everything. It's the place we decide how much money we spend on certain things. So we do a lot here, but we don't do everything. And so we shouldn't try and answer every question today. We've got lots of policy work to be done. There's lots of initiatives to be done. There's lots of partnership work to be done with other people, and we are doing those things, and we will continue to do those things. Budgets are always a balance between our desire to do lots of good stuff, and there are, I know, some amendments to do some more good stuff, and the reality that whatever we do is using somebody else's money. And at the moment, I guess the issue is that those somebody else's don't necessarily have a lot of money. They've got less money than they had before. But I'm very aware, and I think we all are, I hope we all are, that this health crisis is going to have serious economic and social consequences. And I think Liz in particular of all our submitters was highlighting that. So today I was reading the Chamber of Commerce's comments about the business sector, which pays nearly 50% of our rates. 83% of them are currently operating under capacity, some of them significantly under capacity. That means they are not, they're not certainly not working on 4 cylinders. They might be lucky if they're working on 1. 64% of them expect to be worse off in 6 months than they were a month ago before we went into the lockdown process. And we know the reality is that a lot of our business community is in a fragile state, and that means that a lot of people's jobs are in an uncertain state. Some people have lost work. I mean, I'm on the airport board. We've obviously had to go through a downsizing exercise, and that means people's jobs. And there's no two ways around that. And we are not going to be the only business around town by any stretch of the imagination. And I think we've all seen, I think the university was mentioned earlier, we've all seen the troubles that the university is having at the moment, Victoria University is having at the moment. They, again, won't be alone. We've seen the Treasury scenarios and the potential for double-digit unemployment around the country, and we are not going to be immune from that either. So today, for me, what we need to do is to balance trying to keep people working while not requiring ratepayers whose own income is seriously impacted to pay more than they can afford, because some of them are simply not going to have the capacity to do that. I think we had today the encouragement from many of our submitters to borrow, to use our balance sheet, and I think that is the right thing to do. That's what our government's doing as well. It's thinking about the long term, the things that have benefit over many years, potentially over generations, which we can fund then over many years and over generations. We put, as I said, a very extensive list of shovel-ready projects to the government. I'm not quite sure what they're going to do with that lot. Apparently, and I was in a meeting today with ministers, and they said 1,800 different projects which they've got across the country. So how many we will get, I don't know, but we have to keep on putting our best foot forward, and we will continue to do that and advocate for those things. We were encouraged today also to be more resilient, and our shovel-ready list that we put up includes many things that are about resilience, especially the 3 waters. Also progressing Civic Square, the municipal office building, is in that list as well. We were also encouraged to be more climate friendly, and I have to say, and those who were in the Let's Get Wellington Moving meeting, which we had earlier yesterday, wasn't it, Jenny and Sarah? Pushing very, very hard to try and get some of those transformative projects happening in terms of public transport, walking and cycling to get ourselves on a more sustainable footing. And of course, we'll be making a submission on innovating streets very soon. So I'm very keen that we are going to be transformative over a period of time, and the more we can get done, the faster we can get it done, the better. I know, finally, I'm going to say, I know that there are some, sorry, the other thing I was going to say is, just in terms of where we started from, we started off with 7% rates increase proposed this year and next year and the year after and the year after, without Let's Get Wellington Moving, without Civic Square, without any extra investment in water, without temporary libraries, and without COVID. And we've managed to get down to 4.95 at the moment this year. And that's a response to our community's desire to keep the rate level lower if we can. However, having said that, what we've done is we've essentially pushed a number of costs onto next year. So next year is not looking very pretty at all. And I think we need to be thinking not only about this year, but also about next year and about our community's ability to afford things. So I know there's some really good things that people are going to be putting up, but we've also got to be careful what we spend, because it is other people's money and they are going to be struggling in terms of being able to afford things. So I think I'm going to leave it there and look forward to the discussion. So I move the draft annual plan. And it's going to be seconded by Deputy Mayor. Thank you. Do you wish to speak at this stage, Sarah?
I'll reserve my right, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Right, so we're looking for, I think it'd probably be most useful if we've got any amendments on the table first. So Councillor Pennant.
Thank you, Mayor Foster. Kia ora koutou. Look, every generation, our city must go through some kind of transformation, and obviously we've had some wonderful opportunities to do that in the past. The COVID-19 pandemic, future challenges around climate change and earthquakes do provide us with that impetus to transform, as our public participants have so eloquently argued. And we do need big solutions to some of those issues. And as Liz has reminded us, we must honour our commitments to Te Tiriti. I'd really like to thank the staff. They've done an amazing job under huge pressure to pull this budget together. They have offered much advice, and I appreciate that. I'd also like to thank colleagues. This series of amendments that I'm moving is the result of a lot of collaboration, a lot of consultation, a lot of debate and arguments sometimes, but no division here. It's all been great. And the public participants, so inspiring. Thank you. That gives strength to our collective elbow, I think. This package of Te Putoa is about trying to respond to some of those challenges, building on the great work that we already did in passing a pandemic response package. The idea is that this is a whole of council response, not just to be siloed off into different areas. And in particular, it is a follow-up to the declaration of climate and ecological emergency that we passed last June. We are supposed to be trying to think big and think sustainably. And the aims that were listed are large. Honouring our treaty obligations, making sure that people do actually have jobs, a huge concern for us, I'm sure. Reaching our carbon zero obligations, particularly over the next 10 years, maintaining our creative capital status, introducing the idea of the circular economy, and increasing our resilience and our infrastructure. So there are a number of initiatives here which councillors will speak to because they've done some fantastic work. I'd particularly like to thank Councillor Rush, Councillor Free for helping me with some of these ones that I'm going to speak to now, but other people will raise them. So the improved energy performance, where Councillor Free has a lot of expertise. This is one of the easiest things that we can do to address the threat of climate change. It's cheap, it can be delivered now, and we will have warmer and safer homes as a result. It is already delivering those homes, and we know that we get local investment when people get their homes audited. They go and spend between $1,000 to $4,000 to improve their energy performance. It is going to be a great pleasure to work with Councillor Rush on a green infrastructure project. I've talked about this for a long time now, and really this triennium I want to see some progress on this. This is about looking after our stormwater in a more sustainable way, about encouraging biodiversity and also increasing amenity into the city. And I know there's some amendments around local procurement coming up, so obviously I would hope that this is a great opportunity to put that into practice. Many of you will know that I've been passionate about the Built Heritage Incentive Fund. If we want to build back better, not just to what we had before, we need to continue to invest to meet the threat of earthquakes. They are real. We have had 2 significant ones over only a 3-year period, and that has been very traumatic, and our owners of prone buildings are under enormous financial pressure and will be even more so after COVID. So I would like us to put some more money into the Built Heritage Incentive Fund to get those heritage buildings off the list. This is not tagged to any one particular building. It will be
Councillor Panic, I'm going to give you the extra minute.
Okay, I've nearly finished. Nearly
okay,
finished.
okay, yep.
Thank you. So that is a contestable fund. So again, I'd just like to thank colleagues, thank staff. We've had a lot of discussion over a couple of weeks. It is gratefully appreciated the chance to work together, the chance to get advice when I've put up an idea and been told that it's got problems with it. I find that useful, and I look forward to debate. Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor Pennant. Now, I know that there'll be a seconder for that. Cyrus, though, I think it'd be useful if somebody would circulate or to email us the whole of the amendment, because there's quite a lot of bits to it, and it's quite hard to see it if you haven't got it all in front of you.
Yeah, I did send those.
So we got those
yeah, this afternoon.
Okay, so they haven't changed from whatever you. They haven't changed from whatever you last sent. Is the key?
No.
Okay, no, thank you. That's cool. Thank you. Right. Okay, who's seconding? Oh, and sorry. The other question I was going to ask is I just want to check how many other people have got amendments, and I'm particularly interested in whether there's amendments which go to money. Does it go to money, Fleur?
Not immediately, but it's the social procurement amendment that was circulated a few days ago, and I also added on a bit.
That'll be fine. That'll be fine. Yeah, Councillor Calvert, does yours go to money? No, thank you. It just helps to know that if we're it gives you a bit of a feel for how much you're willing to go to. Right. Okay. Seconded by Councillor Paul. Thank you.
I'll reserve my right to speak until the end.
Right. Okay. So we're speaking now to the amendment. Councillor Fitzsimons.
Oh, kia ora everyone. I just want to thank Councillor Pennant and Councillor Paul for this amendment. When I stood for election to the council, I committed to my community that I would be bold and make reducing emissions central to all decision making on the council. And I'm really grateful that these amendments give an opportunity to take a step towards that pledge that I made. I just want to particularly pick up on F, and that's around the reducing the removal of, there's a suggestion in the draft annual plan at present that the rates remission policy for first home buyers of $5,000 be removed. Paragraph F of these amendments takes that out of the draft annual plan. And I think it's particularly important that we do keep that rates remission policy, because we do have a housing crisis in Wellington and a shortage. And we know that renters are being charged too much. And this acts as some incentive to get people into their first home and to see increased supply of housing in Wellington. So I would be very reluctant to accept that we should remove this particular rates remission policy. We know that these new homeowners will become ratepayers for the rest of the time they live in Wellington. So I think it's a really good investment in people buying their first home. But I also want to make it clear that the other reason I'll be supporting this is because first-time homeowners don't have a voice. They don't have a big lobby group like others do. So I think it's particularly important that we compensate for that and make sure that the council does everything to support them. And I just want to also commend Councillor O'Neill about the commitment here to Indigenous biodiversity through expanded weed management. She has been absolutely committed since she first got to council about what this city council doing more around weeds. And it's not the most popular or exciting proposal, but I'm so pleased to see this finally on the agenda and in an amendment so that we can have a say on it. So yeah, just big ups to Councillor O'Neill for that part of this amendment as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Fitzsimons. Who's next? Nobody else on the amendment? Councillor Conde. I was going to say that makes life nice and quick. Get my tongue untied. Councillor Conde.
Kia ora, thank you, Mayor Foster. I just want to start with a quote from apparently James Shaw. Chloe Swarbrick, I heard Chloe Swarbrick said that James Shaw tells her this, which is that people tend to overestimate what we can get done in 1 year and underestimate what we can get done in 3 years. And I really like this package of amendments that Councillor Pennant and Councillor Paul are moving, because I feel like it's not trying to bite off more than we can chew. It is relatively modest, but it is stepping us in the right direction and setting us up for the long-term plan and the conversations and action and transformation that we really want to see happen in that plan as we work towards next year. So I think this is a really great balance between those two things, and really is going to set us up for having a great year and pushing the council in the right direction. I particularly want to talk to I, which is the part of the amendment looking at focusing on minor improvements for walking to school and for disabled people. You know, one of my election campaigns was around enabling my 7-year-old to be able to walk to school and lots of other kids to be able to walk to school. The reason that he gets driven to school by car is not because I have any concerns about stranger danger or because we live too far away. It's because it just doesn't feel safe for him to be walking from our house to the school, even though it's a walkable distance, because some of those crossings are just a bit challenging for a 7-year-old. So this amendment is about just getting a bit more focus on outcomes when we're looking at our minor works budgets, and just trying to be a bit more focused on particularly children and disabled people. And as Alan Blake said, if we focus on walking, when we're looking at walking improvements, if we focus on children and the disabled, then we get it right for everybody. It will work for everybody, and that's what this amendment is focused on. I just want to quickly note that I'm going to be supporting most of this package to go out for consultation, because I think it's, we've heard from lots of public participants who say they want us to do more in this area today. So I'm really keen for it to go out to public consultation so that we can hear from our community. Some people may want us to take more action, and others will be concerned about the affordability. And I think our community has a right to have that conversation. I'm looking forward to hearing from them. The only element of this package that I would like to vote on separately is the, I'm going to oppose F, which Councillor Fitzsimons just spoke about, which is the rates remission, because the effect of this amendment is essentially to take it out of the consultation document. And as I said, I think that we should be taking as much out to our communities for consultation as possible. So I support that that should stay in so that our community can have their say. No guarantees which way I'll be voting on it in June when it comes back around. So that's my take is I'm really keen for this to go out to our community for them to give us their views on it. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Now let's go back to, can I see who's raised their hand? So Councillor Rush and Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Okay, let's start with the good stuff. And I have collaborated, as we always do, in regard to the better management of stormwater. So for me, if we can have natural pathways that do the job for us, that takes burden off our network. The network is designed to always break at some point in time. And so investing in stormwater management using natural processes and sieves and so forth to protect biodiversity is something I'm supportive of. However, the other parts of the amendment I'm less inclined to support. Bit of a quick bit of Googling, Tipatoa means growing brave, so not quite Build Back Better. Build Back Better seems to be an academic think tank out of Auckland University, but anyway, that's by the by. I'll be happy with the resource recovery park with Councillor Foon there. I think that allocating particular funds to particular sectors from the City Recovery Fund is premature. I think the City Recovery Fund needs to be established. It needs to have proper governance, and it needs to have some sort of criteria as to where funds go. So I think giving it to the arts right now is premature. The Climate Lab proposal is inconsistent with the First to Zero policy. The First to Zero policy describes the Climate Lab as a long-term initiative, not an early one. You might notice that the sewage sludge treatment plant, though, is an early initiative, and that is in this year's annual plan, so I'm thrilled about that. Where else? I will support the home energy audits. I think that's, as Councillor Pannett said, is sensible, and it's an easy win. Should have been done years ago. I question why on earth were these houses built without proper insulation. When I helped my dad on building sites in the 70s, I always got to put the bats in. Happy with the rates remission initiative from Councillor Fitzsimons, and with the Building Heritage Incentive Fund increase. I will happily support Councillor Condi's inclusion for the working for schools and disabled people. I had hoped to see early childhood centres go in there, but I'm guessing schools is a broad definition. I think that the detail that Councillor Pannett has put into the Tipatoa Build Back Better is impressive, but has come far too late. it seems to also replicate things that I expect the staff will do. I just don't think it's warranted, so unfortunately I won't be supporting that. Oh, here's current sea level rise, by the way.
Sorry, I've got to stop unmuting myself. You're got all that sorted out, Councillor Pennant, now? Good, excellent, thank you. We're getting some echoes apparently, so that's why I muted myself. See if that would help. Right, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Look, I've been through a process of getting my head around what was actually in here and what wasn't in here. And I guess my major concern with it was, were we doubling up? You know, because of course we do have a resilience fund through the grants pool of money. We do have environmental funds, we do have arts and culture funds, we have all of those things already. So I guess my only concern is that we might be doing a double up. I find it hard to argue with any of the actual initiatives. I think they're all actually really worthy. And what interested me was in fact how much of what was said to us in public participation is actually reflected in this package. So on balance, I have decided to support the package. I think it's worth going out to public consultation with it. I think we have to remind ourselves this is a consultation process. We haven't yet made our final decisions. I know we were trying to aim for, you know, a low rate, well, as low as we could get rates, suggested rates. But I think there's more benefit actually in putting this out there than striving at this particular point in time for a particular rates number. So I will be supporting everything. I do appreciate that it's a package which has been put together with quite a bit of thought and deliberately does cover off a lot of different areas. I'm particularly pleased to see the home energy checks. I think especially if they're focused in Wellington City and especially if they actually sort of look for means that people can address damp housing. I think damp housing is a really appreciated cause of ill health in children and families. And there are lots of things that can cheaply be done to actually improve the dryness of a house, which helps keep it warmer as well. Very keen to support weed management. That's a big problem around Wellington. We've heard a lot about these climbing weeds that are taking over some of our bush areas. Walking to school, always been quite a passion of mine. And the stormwater management, I'll be absolutely thrilled if we could do some more water sensitive urban design. And I know there were other things too, the waste work. I don't even think it needs to cost us much because we do have money through the Southern Landfill Waste Levy. And, you know, with the suggestion that's also been made of increasing the tip fees just a little bit, I feel like that's actually not going to impact terribly much on our finances. So I'm really happy to support this. I know we'll go out for consultation. I also know the staff will be combing through things just to make sure if they've already got a savings target, I'm sure they'll make sure there's not double ups or inappropriate double ups. Yeah. But I think this is sending a good message that we're responding to a lot of the feedback we've had today at this particular meeting.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Young, then Councillor Sparrow. And then Councillor O'Neill and Councillor Day.
Okay, so thank you for this. I must say, an overwhelming number of amendments, compendium of amendments. I'm not sure we should think of a word for that. Look, we all stood for different things when we stood for council. I have always been consistent about wanting to bring the rates down. I am really desperately concerned about the financial Armageddon that lies ahead of us. We have really, in my lifetime, there's nothing that I can compare to what is coming down the line. And the economists are all clear about the job losses. Some people will lose their houses. People are already taking big hits on their salaries. I mean, startling numbers coming out of Makara City Council today, which we'll just gloss over, but 50% pay cuts seems a little extreme. But there's nothing like this in my lifetime that I have experienced, and I've been around a lot longer than many councillors. My parents grew up in the Depression, and our childhood was shaped by their attitude towards a lot of things. So, I mean, I just cannot support anything that puts more costs on ratepayers. And it's not a matter of how good they are, how well intentioned they are. We've just got to keep our hands out of people's pockets and make do with. I mean, I'm struggling to cope with a 4.95% rates increase because I know that will put a lot of pressure on people who've lost their jobs, who are struggling to pay their mortgage. I mean, these are going to be really difficult times ahead of us. It hasn't even begun yet. If you read what the economists are saying about what we can expect in the next few months, 3 waves of sort of fiscal hardship coming up. I've never believed in borrowing money for the groceries, which is why I'm struggling with the borrowing money for operational expenditure. I certainly can't support anything which is going to cost more, so I won't be supporting any of these. But in particular, I'd just like to mention the rates remission thing, because that has been what you could technically call a fizzer. And all it's done is, it was because it wasn't working, it was extended to new build apartments. So it was used by property developers and estate agents as an incentive for, buy this now and you get money off your rates. It didn't actually add to the number of houses at all. So anyway, I won't be supporting, I will be opposing all the amendments on the grounds that it's time for us to pull in our heads and just think about Wellingtonians' ability to pay the bills.
Thanks, Councillor Young. Councillor Sparrow, O'Neill, Day, and Calvert. And if I might say, at least we get the bulk of the amendments in one go rather than have, 10 different sets of amendments. I'd much rather have it done this way rather than any other way. Right, Councillor Sparrow.
Thank you. I am simply seeking clarification on F, which is the continued commitment to the rates remission for first-time homeowners. And I do think there is merit in this if it is applied to all first-time homeowners. But my understanding is that it is, as it currently stands, it just applies to new builds. And obviously new builds, only a certain few can afford those, but can I just have clarification on this, please?
Are you asking for a meaning of the motion, or are you asking a question of officers?
I am asking whether the wording as it currently stands is correct, whether it does apply to all first-time homeowners.
No, it doesn't. Officers, can somebody give us it is new builds. Can officers just clarify that? We shouldn't really be answering questions of fact. That should be for officers, but that is the case.
That's correct, it's new builds.
New builds. Okay, there you go. So, Councillor Sparrow, do you wish to carry on?
Well, then the wording of the amendment alludes to more than just that. So I'm not sure whether the intention is for it to apply to all first-time homeowners. So I would like clarification on that before I vote on that.
That's a question of the meaning of the motion, I think. So I'll stop the time there from my perspective. So the mover, Councillor Panic, can you just clarify what your intention was?
Can I just ask Councillor Fitzsimons to answer that, just because we were just trying to package them up?
Yeah, no, I understand that. Councillor Fitzsimons, can you clarify what you intended by the motion?
Yeah, sure. Look, the point of it is to remove the proposal in the draft annual plan to change our rates remission policy to remove the first home buyers rates remission, and that's on page 34 of the draft annual plan. So if this amendment goes through, the proposal to remove that, which currently applies, will be withdrawn and it will continue to apply. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. But to be clear, Councillor Sparrow, the current remission applies to first home owners building a new home, not to any existing home. Back with you, Councillor Sparrow, if you wish to continue.
Quite limited.
No, done? Okay, right. Thank you. Councillor O'Neill.
Kia ora, councillors. I'm joining you here today with a new lockdown quarantine beard. This here is a weed called old men's beard. I've just done some gardening out here today and it fits to what I'm mostly speaking on at the moment. Most recently, Mayor Foster and I went to Tenera Park Community Group, and it was there that we spoke to quite a few individuals who share the sentiments of about 120 different volunteer groups in Wellington, that weeds are a very big challenge for a lot of our community working within the natural environment. Only 8% of our Wellington Council reserve land has ecological weed management, and we know this isn't sufficient to protect our biodiversity. I've got some pretty sad statistics here. Since human settlement, Wellington has lost 95% of inland forests, 99% of coastal forests, 98% of sand dunes, and 99% of wetlands. And anyone that works in conservation or works closely to our beautiful natural environment know that a lot of these ecosystems are really, really essential to protecting our Indigenous biodiversity, our flora and our fauna. I'm outrageously impatient to make change in this area, and if we come out of this annual plan and nothing changes about the status quo, then I firmly believe that we have failed the generations in the city. I want to take a moment to really thank the officers and the community groups and my other councillor colleagues who have worked really hard on the submission and ensuring that that we tackle weeds from all areas in our beautiful city. As we've seen through lockdown, where now traditional economies fall apart, nature is there as an invitation. I've been visited by Karakia for the first time on my front doorstep.
Nice.
And within this proposal as well, we talk about different funding streams. This is $200,000, just a drop in the bucket in terms of borrowing or rates, but it makes a huge, significant impact to the way that we manage our biodiversity in Wellington. We've also seen, we've got a business case here, and we talk about potential additional contracting funding and employment opportunities for Wellington, and I want to acknowledge that as well. I know there are a lot of anxieties about spending at the moment, but when we look at what makes Wellington special, we consider this a preservation of an asset. Some of our strongest assets are our beautiful green space around Zealandia, around the zoo. And when we talk about our landfill extension, biodiversity is so important to making sure that we mitigate the effects. The natural environment is not just something we agree on politically, but something that we should be investing in.
I've given you an extra minute, councillor. If you can wind up shortly, it would be good.
Sure thing. We face a really big challenge, but last year Wellington City Council passed an ecological and climate emergency, and in an emergency we need to make sure that that investment is focused both short-term and in long-term as well. So that's why I've put a submission with my colleagues in here for the annual plan as well. We know that community has a huge investment. Community do 80% of the weed management in our city, and I'd love to be able to support them in that as well. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thank you. Thanks, Councillor O'Neill. Councillor Day, then Councillor Calvert, then Councillor Matthews.
Kia ora koutou. I would like to just begin by acknowledging the work of Iona and Tamitha. Thank you to both of you for your leadership in these amendments. And actually there's been a lot of work in, as I've said, behind the scenes from many councillors across the spectrum. And I think it's important to acknowledge that there is amazing collegiality that has gone on behind this. So thank you everyone for your contributions. There is no doubt that a lot has changed over the last few weeks. Life has changed for many people in ways that they would have never predicted at the beginning of the year. And what that means is that we have to change as a council, and that's really hard. We're a big business. We have a lot of things that have to keep going, and to steer that in a different direction is really challenging. So this conversation today is challenging because by having this, we are not by any means saying that council doesn't do an amazing job, because it does. Our officers work hard and they deliver services with passion, and we really appreciate that. What we're asking for today is for the extra passion that they do have to have the opportunity to come through. Lots of our officers will feel really excited by what they're hearing today. We've had a really clear call from our people who spoke to us today saying be bold. Being bold is scary. It takes courage, and it takes a lot of effort and sometimes a bit of extra work. But I know that this is the right way to go. I feel that these proposals are modest, but they send a very clear message that we know that things need to change. We can't keep doing things the same way we've always done them. People are concerned about what this will cost. There is a cost above money here, and the cost above money is that we're seeing the effects of the environment, which money can't fix in many ways. Hopefully we can do some modest things to change people's behaviours as well, and we'll hear more about that soon. But what we are doing is we are creating a strong future for our young people. By investing, we are showing them that we want to do a better job. And it's wonderful to have some young people on our council now who can speak in person about that. So I welcome their views. I just want to speak to the name Tupu Toa. It was referred to by Councillor Rush as, I'm trying to find where I said, I think it was growing brave. I just want to say Google is fantastic. It helps us a lot in the world of the internet, but please don't use it to translate languages because it is very crude. So tupu or tipu, it can be either or, and we will talk with Taranaki Whanui about what is the correct dialectal option, but it means to grow, develop, and to improve, and that's something that we want to do. And toa means to be bold, brave, strong, and that's what we are doing as a city. We do it every day, and we believe that this kupu, these words hold so much meaning, and they can be built in whatever way works to make sure that our city continues to be strong and to thrive. So I'm going to leave it there because I think other people have covered things really well. Oh, I just wanted to say around the children and accessibility amendment that I think that a really great thing for people if they're watching to look up is the 880 rule. Basically, it says if you make a city work for an 8-year-old and an 80-year-old, you've got a city that works for everybody, and that includes people with disabilities. So I think it's really important that we are taking this kaupapa forward. We're making the city, we're seeing people talk about how much fun it has been to bike around with their families on the roads. They're already saying in the short time that we've gone down to level 3 that it is a little bit more scary. So we need to think about what we can do to harness that energy and that passion that people have found in being active in our local streets. And I look forward to seeing people support these amendments.
Thank you, Councillor Day. I did give you the extra minute there too, by the way. Councillor Calvert.
Thank
you. Thank you. And yes, look, I just want to reiterate, thank you, Councillor Pannett and Councillor Paul for pulling these together and others that, and I think a lot of them, on the face of it, we could, agree with it. But we did ask our officers to come back with 2 options of rates increase below 5%, and one was for 4.9 and the other one was for 2%. And I think if we want to prioritize particular projects, we need to do it within those frameworks of and the 4.95%. So if there was opportunities to pull some other projects out of our budget and substitute those, I don't have a particular issue with that, but I do believe that we do need to keep to our 4.95%. We can't keep borrowing. I was brought up also in an age of where we didn't have any spare cash, we didn't have credit cards. We had to deal with our budget as it was. And I think because we've got so much unknown with COVID-19, now there's a lot of economic figures coming out. We still don't know the true picture. We have got a really tough year ahead of us. And so I really find it difficulty in supporting these amendments as they are, because it's going to take us over that 4.95%. I'm also a little bit concerned that we are fragmenting our recovery approach. We're introducing another package and putting it under a separate name. We're looking very fragmented. So I think what we need to do is, rather than try and fragment us even further, I think what we need to do is just think about really what we want to achieve as a whole, as a council, especially over the next 12 months. And something with a comment about being bold, and so I think sometimes being bold is also being bold enough to say no, and enough's enough. So you can interpret that in as many ways as you want. The other thing is that this budget covers the gamut of what we do as a council. It already covers the environment and infrastructure. It covers off economic development. It covers off our cultural well-being and our social and recreation, urban development and transport. So it already has come together as a cohesive and balanced budget. So I think what we need to do is have faith in it. And if we do want to add stuff in, we've got to be prepared to take it out. Now, there is one of these that I will support because it's actually not requiring any additional money. And I know it was put in to help smooth the process, and that was the amendment by Councillors Condi and Matthews around minor work improvements and traffic resolutions. As I understand that, this is being done within the within existing budgets. So very happy to see that. I'm happy and will support that. As per Councillor Malcolm Sparrow,
Councillor Calvert, if I can get you to wind up shortly.
Okay.
I have given you the extra minute.
Oh, thank you very much, Mayor. Just around the first-time home buyers, I can't support us preferring first-time home buyers moving into new apartments as opposed to first-time home buyers who are not having to buy a house already built. So I won't be supporting that change in these amendments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thank you. Councillor Matthews.
Koto. I'm really excited to be able to support these amendments, and I think that when we were elected, we wanted to take the good advice of our officers and appreciate their hard work, but we also want to be able to apply our own creativity, what we know of our own communities, the passion we have in our own portfolio areas to make changes and improvements. And I think that this is a modest way to do that, but it is achieving that goal in this package of amendments. I wanted to just sort of acknowledge that as part of, there are changes that will cost extra as part of these amendments. I think they are modest amounts. However, I'd like to commend my colleague, Councillor Foon, who has also identified some extra revenue, which will be discussed later in the debate. And I just also want to quickly talk about the walking issue, and to thank my Jenny Condi for the conversations we've been able to have about, the thing that people have really enjoyed. We're living in difficult times, which are hugely challenging for many, and there's a lot to face. But the thing that people are really enjoying is the walkability in their local communities. And I know that similar experience of taking a little one to school, and often, we didn't have the option, we didn't have a car at the time, so we were walking or using public transport, and often perilous journeys to get to school, where my daughter could have had that independence, that pride that you get from walking to school on your own a lot sooner if that journey had been safer and more accessible. And I just want to quickly touch on accessibility. You'll all know that upholding the voice of disabled people is a real passion of mine, and accessibility and inclusion. And I guess my goal is to get to the point where accessibility is business as usual for our council. It's just there, designed into everything we do at all times. However, to get there is going to take leadership. And that's leadership politically, leadership from the community, and the leadership and support of our officers as a council. So I feel these walking improvements to really put disabled people at the centre of those changes are extremely important, and I appreciate it, all of your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak on the amendment? Councillor Paul, I don't think you've spoken yet. Do you wish to speak?
Yes, sure.
And you seconded it? Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Tēnei te mihi nui kia koutou katoa. That's just a big thank you to everybody and all involved, including officers, councillor colleagues, and also our awesome public participants this morning. I'll just do a few responses to some of the points raised by our colleagues. The first, I think Councillor Day, you summarised those points perfectly around tupatoa. But I just wanted to respond to something else that Councillor Rush brought up around Climate Lab, and that was around, I can't remember your exact comments, but they were around Climate Lab, and I just wanted to make it clear that Climate Lab was an initiative led by officers, and which was meant to be ready for the business as usual kind of annual plan, and that there's already been extensive work done around this. And so obviously our staff were disrupted during the COVID kind of response. And so this is really just making sure that that's in the plan and is in line with Te Ata Kura. And I guess also in terms of Councillor Calvert's comments, just around the tupatoa and how that's a separate kind of initiative within the budget, I just wanted to say that it's, a totally valid point. And I suppose our reason for doing that was because our the different community groups that have come to us with their suggestions. We're framing it as Build Back Better. Many people have spoken about this kind of building back better analogy, such as Ian White. We met with him recently, Dame Anne Salmond, myself and Regional Councillor Thomas Nash. So we thought it would be important to kind of give that its own shine, given the amount of public enthusiasm towards it, as we saw this morning in the public participation. So thank you so much to everyone who made the time for that public participation. So I won't talk for too long, but essentially I just wanted to say, in terms of the home energy audit, seems that that's been received really well. I think that really does speak to the tenets or values of a just transition, which means that every piece of work that we do towards mitigating our emissions must also address the experiences of those who are already disadvantaged and have contributed the least to emissions. If we can ensure that people are able to take the steps to ensure their houses are warm, dry, and healthy and safe, then that also addresses the emissions factors of energy, but also it ensures that that these people living in unsafe and mouldy, damp housing are not further impacted by the threat of COVID as well. So thank you, Councillor Fitzsimons, for always, I guess, being a champion of the just transition. Climate Lab, we've already spoken to that. Just want to quickly mahi to Councillor O'Neill for her excellent mahi on Old Man's Beard. I had a meeting yesterday with some of our local Pole Hill protectors, and they talked about a worker gang of people who swept through Wellington 25 years ago.
Councillor Paul, I'm going to give you another minute. You don't have to answer everybody. You're not doing the right of reply.
Yeah, totally. I'm just acknowledging my colleagues who have helped to put this together. So thank you, Councillor O'Neill, for your work on that, and I'm hoping that we can eradicate Old Man's Beard once and for all, and that it doesn't come back for a further, hopefully 20 years. And yeah, just a massive thank you to everyone that helped us put this together. I'm really happy to move this today, and thank you to Councillor Panna on her leadership on this. Kia ora.
Karen, thank you. Stop that. Anybody else? Councillor Foon, you didn't want to say anything about the resource recovery? Not that I'm encouraging. I know you might want to speak, but you were mentioned, so that's why I was asking.
I was going to save it. I've got
okay, that's fine. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. I'll do that. Okay, look, I want to say a few words. So first of all, thank you for all the work that's gone into this. There are several bits I'm going to support. There's one that I probably won't. So that just first of all on the resource recovery park, I think, and it's certainly working with Laurie, very, very strongly of the view that we need to reduce our footprint on the planet. And if we can transfer or translate what is currently waste into something that both produces jobs and produces resource, then I am all for doing that. It'll be interesting to see how this goes and what it looks like and what sort of creative thinking there is. But I know, Councillor Foon, you're bringing a lot of creative thinking into that, and I know that there is a lot in our community as well. So keen to support that. With the city recovery one, look, I'm pretty relaxed about that because the reality is that we are already, as an organisation, and Wellington NZ, doing a lot of work with the arts sector, with the event sector, with the hospitality sector, in terms of that recovery process. So very happy to, that doesn't really change anything in a sense. The home energy audits, look, I think that sits very well alongside the comments which were made by quite a number of our submitters this afternoon, I should say. The one thing I would say is because it's quite a lot of audits being done, we probably do want to make sure that we keep an eye on how many physical pieces of work are done in houses as a result of that. I mean, there's not much point in us doing 5,000 audits and nobody actually doing any heating or any insulation as a result of that. So I think we need to be keeping a good eye on whether that's actually delivering as we go along. And I certainly don't think we should be spending money on fixing people's houses. That's definitely private benefit, and they should be doing that. In terms of the one I won't support, it's the rates remission. I always thought that was a bit of a gimmick in the first place. It's clearly been shown to be ineffective, and it's also discriminatory in terms of who benefits from it, who doesn't. But as Councillor Condi said, putting it in the document allows people to have a comment on it, and I think that's worth doing. If you take it out of the document, then people can't comment. I think that was in saying that. The pipeline of traffic resolutions, actually Councillor Free and I, as a few years ago, put up $200,000 into the budget as it was then, and it was specifically targeted to improve access to schools, to make walking and biking to schools for our young people safer. And so all you're doing here is basically saying, let's try and make that process easier in terms of the traffic resolution and get on with doing more of that. So very happy to support that. And thank you for not adding to the cost of doing it. We're just trying to make it happen smoother. And the final one I wanted to comment on is, because this is an absolute passion of mine, which is the biodiversity addition. So Terry, thank you, Councillor O'Neill. You know, very clearly we do need to do more. We've been on an incredible journey of environmental restoration in this city my entire time on the council. We are taking some big steps now in terms of predator-free in particular, hopefully in terms of finishing our reserve network. But the one bit that we know, and I've certainly been talking with officers for some time, and I know they're preparing a paper, and this is the one, there is a paper sitting behind. It's an officer paper sitting behind, and in the normal course of events, that would have gone through the management team process and we got a recommendation, yay or nay, about it. But there's been a lot of work being done by our staff to back this up, and I think you'll probably find that there is going to be more big picture things happening, and I know Councillor O'Neill, you're aware of those as well, in terms of putting more resource into biodiversity management. But the weak area that we've got at the moment is in pest plants as opposed to pest animals. So I think this sort of helps complete the suite there of doing that. Now, having said all that, I'm not particularly comfortable that we're going over 5%. I would have liked 4.99 as opposed to 5.07, as I think it is. And I guess what we all need to do is try and work really hard with our officers, and we have tasked them to do that. And we've also said we're going to play a role in this as well, but to try and work really hard to see if we can get by the end of the consultation process, the number back under 5, unless of course our community comes back and says, hey, keep on going for it. But this is not being borrowed, remember, this is stuff that we're going to rate now, and people are going to have to pay either now or if we defer rates and allow people to borrow effectively those rates for the next 2 quarters. So it's not a borrowed thing, it is one that's going to impact people this year. So if we can get it down below 5 during the next 2 months, then that'll be a great thing. But there's some good stuff in here, and I'm happy to support those ones which I've just mentioned. Right of reply, Councillor Pannett.
Well, thank you, colleagues, for your very constructive contributions to this debate on a day that we are being told that we are not unified. I'm very grateful for that. So I'd just like to thank everyone for their supportive comments. That's fantastic. And just respond to a couple of points that were raised. Councillor Rush, yes, budgets are sometimes done in a rush, but look, it was basically to try and respond to COVID. This is where this idea sort of came from, that we needed a big response, as well as a response to some of the other resilience challenges. Councillor Free, sorry, I did forget to put in a report about the energy audits, but I think we can get that done. And I get your point about doubling up, so certainly happy to talk to you and some of the other councillors just to make sure that we are clear about where money is going, where it's not. That's fair enough. Councillor Young, thank you for being a champion for, around affordability. I think that's helpful. I think we're all sensitive to that point. But I guess where I come from is that if we don't spend money, we're not investing, and then we get a whole lot of other problems. And water and buildings and waste are areas where we do, I think, need to put more money in. Yep, councillors, look, I'm sensitive to the fact that we're trying to get this in under 5. So, my idea has been that we take some of the savings, and we need to borrow a little bit of money, but most of it can be done under 5. If someone can find a reasonable thing to take out of the budget over the next 6 weeks, I'm very happy to look at that. And finally, this package, which has been bought by, by a whole lot of people, is about augmenting what we already have, which is good, which we voted for, and it will really take us into the future, and that future hopefully will be very exciting. So thank you everyone for your comments. I really much appreciate that.
Thank you, Councillor Pannett. Now, in terms of taking, sorry?
Take them separately just so people can vote.
Well, I just want to check if we can, how many are wanted to be taken separately? I know F is going to be separate. Are there any others?
What's F?
F is the rates remission one. I've got the right number, haven't I? That's the way I've written it down. Okay, right. Are there any others that people want to be taken separately just to speed the voting process up?
Yeah, can the agree officers will work with schools and disabled people? That one?
That's I.
Is that I?
That's what I think is I.
Okay, I don't have bullet points on my.
Yeah, no, I understand that. Yes, yep. Okay, so we've got F and I separately. Any others?
B, investment into the arts. C, climate lab. and the whole of Roman numeral 2 and Roman numeral 3. And
oh, well, they're just editorial. So,
are they supporting?
They're editorial things.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. So I've got B, C, F, and I separate. Any others?
Yep, 17.
17. Hang on a moment.
Your Worship, I agree to.
No, that hasn't been moved yet, so we can't vote on that because we haven't got there yet. Okay. So we're only going down as far as, here's the challenge of trying to do this on the screen. Can you go to as far as we've got down?
15, Your Worship.
Actually, I think what we'll do, just to make it easy, I think we'll do them one at a time because otherwise, so people actually know what they're voting on rather than it's too hard to see them all on the screen. Okay, so Cyrus, if we can go to the top.
Yep.
Right, okay. So if people can get their voting buttons, and we start with A.
Councillor Young. Okay. Councillor Calvert. Councillor O'Neill.
Okay, we're all done.
That's done. Carried 13.
That's past 13-2. The two, who were the two? Just so we know.
Councillor Young and Councillor Calvert.
Right, thank you. Okay.
Is
B,
it too late? Is it too late to ask for that vote to be recorded?
they're all recorded. As a matter of course, they're recorded.
Good, thank you.
Yes. Okay. You are recording them all as we go, aren't you, Cyrus? Just to
I am,
sure.
Your Worship, yes.
That always happens in council meetings. Okay, B. I think we've got one more to go. Okay. 12-3. It's passed. Who were the three this time?
Councillor Calvert, Councillor Rush, and Councillor Young.
Thank you. Okay, C. Couple more to go.
Councillor Pennant, Councillor Calvert, Councillor Paul.
Okay, I've got 12-3 there. So again, the three were.
Councillor Calvert, Councillor Rush, and Councillor Young against.
Okay, thank you. Okay, D. One more to go.
Councillor Pennant.
Okay, it's 13-2. The two this
Carried.
time were.
Councillor Young and Councillor Calvert.
Thank you. E, which is Wellington Water. You can just move them up just a fraction too, please, Cyrus. Thank you. One missing.
Councillor Day.
Okay, 13-2 again.
Councillor Young and Councillor Calvert against.
I could guess. Okay, F, we can move that up again. Okay, rates remission 1. One missing. Who's missing, Cyrus?
Your Worship, you need to vote, please.
I thought I'd voted. Oh, that makes a difference. Okay, it's me. Right. I thought I wouldn't want to vote twice. Okay.
Okay,
right.
So that's carried 8-7.
That's carried 8-7. Okay.
Against are Councillor Deputy Mayor Free, Councillor Wolf, Councillor Young, Councillor Condi, Councillor Calvert, and Councillor Sparrow. Could you please wait a minute so I can record these?
Mayor Foster, just while we're doing this, can I request that maybe after this voting we have a
We're
short
going
break?
to. We are
Good.
going to. I've already been asked that, and I said to Jennifer, yes, we'll do that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you got everybody there, Cyrus? So again, can you just go through the against there because you were partway through it?
Deputy Mayor Free, Councillor Sparrow, Councillor Calvert, Councillor Condi, Councillor Young, and Councillor Wolf against.
How many is that?
That's 7. Say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Okay, and I was against 2. So that's 7.
Oh, okay.
Okay, right. Okay, right. Okay. G, built heritage. Okay, that's 13-2. I'm presuming councillors Calvert and Young.
That's right.
Cool. Okay. H. Okay, 12-3. Against were, I presume, councillors Calvert, Young, and somebody else.
Councillor Rush.
Okay, thank you. And I. One more to go. Thank you. And one against was?
Young.
Councillor Young. Okay, look, thank you. Okay, councillors, just before we take a little break, can I just check how many more amendments have we got to go? So Councillor Thune, 3. Okay, hopefully the others will be a bit quicker than this. And can I just check, do people want to have to go back to the substantive and discuss that as well? I'm just thinking of time management. Yeah. Okay, not too many. Okay, right, that's cool. Okay, well, if we take a break, let's come back at 15:15, which is 7 minutes. Is that enough? Cool. Okay, thank you. Oh, sort of.
Hey Terry, just while I actually asked Wellington Water if the roving crews might be able to do a bit of weeding, and the response was that it's quite complicated with Greater Wellington Regional Council consenting. I meant to try and get hold of you before today, but
okay,
anyway.
Sean, we're back on.
Great.
Right, okay. Welcome back, everyone. I think we've got everyone there. Have we? Just about. It's like trying to work out where the first 15 is and trying to, everybody should have a number to make life a lot easier. I think Councillor Calvert's not quite back yet.
I'm a 12, second 5.
The first 15, I quite like that.
Right. Okay. Okay, so back to substantive. Who's going to be next up? Let's get through the amendments. Councillor Foon, you've got an amendment.
Aye. Kia ora tātou. Thank you, Mayor Foster, for leading us through this today. I've got quite a few
Your Worship,
amendments.
excuse me,
Sorry.
we have to also vote for, on the rest of the amendments. We only voted.
Oh, there were a whole lot of other bits of
yes.
You mean all the tail end of the word stuff?
Yep. Everything
okay,
else.
right.
Everything
okay,
else
sorry.
but the other ones.
Okay, right. Yeah. So can you put those up for us there, Sarah, so people know what they're voting on? These were just editorial suggestions, effectively.
So through His Worship, that would be 13A2, 13A3, 4, and number 15.
And the way I read those is that they are all a reflection of the things that we've just passed. Is that correct, Councillor Pannett?
That is absolutely correct. I was just trying to help officers because we're on a tight time frame.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
I think number 15 might just be a repetition of something that appeared already above.
It does rather look like that, doesn't it? Okay. So can we take 15 out and we'll just deal with the others? Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll put those. If we can all vote in the usual way.
Sorry, can I just see what those are again?
So through His Worship, this one, number 2, agree to add the following wording. 3, agree to add the following wording.
If I might say something that's helpful, I did actually check with Baz and he's very comfortable with these.
And this one, number 4, add the following wording.
So these are just editorial, right?
Yeah.
Yes, the editorial, and they're just effectively reflecting the things which have just been passed.
Yes, but one of those is adding another 100,000 to the earthquake strengthening, isn't it?
We've already passed that. So we voted on the dollars. This simply describes that's what we've done.
These.
Okay.
Yeah, these are just the words that help.
Okay.
Explain.
So
So now,
Your Worship, just having voted against all of them, I mean, just want to check. It really makes no difference whether I vote for these or not.
not really.
Not really.
These are editorial. I think it's unnecessary, but if it's helpful, it's helpful.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So we're in the middle of the votes. We've got 9 people who voted so far. 6 to go.
So waiting for Councillor Rush, Councillor O'Neill.
One to go. That's it. Okay.
Councillor
One against was
Calvert.
Councillor Calvert. Okay. Thank you. Right. Sorry about that, Councillor Foon. Back to you.
Kia ora tātou. I'd just like to start by thanking Councillor Day, who will second these amendments. So there are 5, and one of them has already been passed through the Tiputoa paper. So things are not the same since COVID has arrived in New Zealand, but unfortunately at the landfill, it is the same. And to my dismay this morning, I opened up an OECD report to see that New Zealand is the worst at wasting in the world. There's some justification around our measurements, but regardless, that is horrific and embarrassing. So clearly the systems that we've got aren't working and we really need to do better. And that is one of the reasons why I've stood for council. It has been quite a big area looking at the landfill. It's complex and it's a really hard place to make change. But today in the annual plan, we've really got an opportunity to help our community make some change and seek out the opportunity that we've got ahead of us. So I'm really proud that Wellington City Council has worked with 8 other councils around the Wellington region, and together we've all committed to reducing our waste by 1/3 by 2026. But that's only 5 years away and we haven't really made much change. So with this annual plan today, what we've really tried to do is find the opportunities to leverage to make those changes. So what I'm asking you to vote on today, colleagues, is around fees. Now, before COVID, the fees were looking like they were going up. And I am asking that we retain those fees for the landfill. And the reason why is that this is one of the main tools we have to encourage behaviour change. But also it provides us with an opportunity to incentivise the behaviour we want. So we won't be, I'm asking to, in this consultation, we are not putting up the fees for green waste and organic kitchen waste, because this sorting process is really important to helping the behaviour that we need. I'm also asking, we've got an opportunity in here to commit to the resource recovery park, which you've already voted on, and I thank you for that. And we've managed to get another 75,000 through the waste levy fund, which is not including any more money in rates. But this is a very exciting opportunity. This is something our community is desperate for, that we find ways to reuse our resources. And Wellington City Council is the key to that being unlocked. This is only for the business case, but it gives us a step on understanding what opportunity we've got to go forward. The other one is around our kitchen waste trial. The amendment here is asking officers to bring an interim report on the analysis that we'll get so that we can at least decide whether we want to put this in our LTP for our communities to feed back to us on.
I'm going to give you an extra minute.
Thank you, Andy. Okay, and the last one is that we've also, our officers have agreed that they will sit with us once they've worked out the fees, how they can help contribute to more waste minimisation projects, both those that the council are doing or possibly take it out to grants, because the community has many initiatives going on around reusable takeaway systems or repair cafes, you name it. There's so many opportunities that people are desperate and they can't to get going with their initiatives, but they can also create jobs and opportunity through this. So yes, I hope that you'll be able to get through. There's also a big piece of copy that we've rewritten to really give a sense of the situation ahead of us with our waste. So I ask you all to support me on this. And yeah, thank you to Iona Pannett once again, who has laid down a lot of the foundation for this work, and to officers for being very patient while we were getting through it. Kia ora.
Thank you, Laurie. Now, can we have the words up on the, so we actually know what the words are? Thanks, Cyrus. And then, and who's seconding Councillor Foon?
Councillor Day.
Okay, thank you. Right. Okay, thank you. Right, so it's, so we are dealing with, there's a 16 presumably there, is there?
Yep.
If you can just roll that so we can actually see this. Oh gosh, there's a lot there, isn't there? Maybe not.
Sorry, it's editorial. All of the amendments have been supported by officers. So
okay, so 16's editorial.
16's editorial, yes.
Right. Okay, and then can you roll down to 17?
I forgot to mention the marina fees, but once again, that's it's a ring-fenced system we've got there, and we really need to maintain the levels of service. So I've put that we keep the increases in for the marinas.
Okay. Okay, right. So, Councillor Day, do you want to second? And then what I will do, I just want to check with officers. Officers, can you just tell us those numbers that are in there? Were they the numbers which were in the original fee package that was originally proposed 6 weeks or so ago?
Mayor, I'd have to ask one of my team to respond to that question. Andy, is that something, or Moana, you can respond?
That's correct.
So, okay, so they are. So you're simply reinstating the numbers which are already there. Okay. Councillor Day.
Kia ora, anō koutou. Just to explain my strange behaviour before, I had a spider crawling up under my arm. So if you thought I was doing something strange, I was just putting it back on the ground where it could go. You'd think it would be Councillor O'Neill having those issues, not me. She's the one that's got the beautiful greenery. But speaking of greenery, I just want to start by saying we've heard a lot about the environment over the last few weeks, and just about every Facebook viewing experience I have, and on Twitter as well, people are commenting on the environment and how much better it's been since we've been leaving it alone. In fact, I watched a beautiful video called Papa Tuanuka is Breathing, and it actually really reminded me of the place that I as an individual hold in this world. It's pretty insignificant, but we need to do everything we can to make sure that our impacts on the environment are also are not significant. So I think that one of the things that that struck me early on was the conversation that we started around recycling and the community's concern about how they could store their recycling. And it made me reflect that we've created the perfect system where the problem just disappears from our home. We just send it off and it magically goes away, and we don't think about it ever again. Those bits of rubbish that we just carelessly put in the bin and said, yep, thanks, they actually don't disappear. Most of those things are still wherever they got put in the tip forever and a day. And I think it's really important that we do take an approach that says we need to think about this differently. And so I really want to congratulate and thank Councillor Foon for digging deep and for looking for every possible way that we could change this. You've been really creative, and I really admire the way you've worked with officers and worked so hard to look for opportunities and working with what we've got as well, which is I'm really impressed. So thank you. But I think it's really important that we do some things that show the community that they can take control as well, and that they can be involved. So I think there's so many amazing opportunities with what you've produced here, and it's really exciting to see that we can turn this around, but we do have to make some really bold, brave moves. So thank you for bringing this forward for us and helping us to take this out of sight, out of mind situation and bringing it right to the forefront of the minds of Wellingtonians. And yes, some people will find this challenging because we're talking about putting up fees, but the reality is that it costs a lot of money to deal with waste. And we want to get to the point where our consumers start saying to the producers, can you please change how you are doing this? And unfortunately, one of the main ways of doing this is to say, we're going to be charging you for getting rid of your rubbish, so that people really do have to think about this. So I completely welcome all of these amendments. I think you've looked in lots of ways for things that services that people just should be paying for. And so I applaud the Marina's approach as well. So thank you for finding that. And I will leave it there, and I look forward to hearing other people's whakaaro and their kōrero around this issue.
Thank you. I suspect this one's going to be quite strongly supported. I'm tempted to ask if anybody wants to speak against it, for the sake of saving some time. I don't see anybody wants to speak against it. So should we go straight to the vote? Councillor Foon, did you wish to?
Could I say a couple of things?
Yeah, okay. Well, if you're speaking for it, then I can certainly go to the vote.
Yeah, Well,
Okay, there you go.
I am going to support, but I would also like to remind councillors that, and the public actually, that the City Council has committed to a project in Mile Point, which will take solids and possibly utilise that to turn the waste into fertiliser or energy or another source. And a lot of that waste is actually stuff that goes down the waste disposal as kitchen waste as well. So there might be some overlap with this, but I've spoken with Councillor Food, we're comfortable with that, but it does actually dovetail quite nicely into other maybe more longer term solutions we're doing for sludge.
Andy, can I just quickly speak?
We've had 3 speakers for. I just want to see, does anybody wish to speak against? Do you wish to speak against Councillor Sparrow? Councillor Sparrow, do you want to? I'll let Councillor Pannett speak, but I don't want to have 15 of us speaking and saying how wonderful.
No,
I don't. Yeah.
Look, I just want to express my gratitude that Councillor Foon is now on this council. She's done such a great job on leading on waste. I want to thank Councillor Fitzsimons too for actually pointing out there was an opportunity here. It was her eagle eyes that picked that up. Look, we did begin to articulate a very bold and ambitious waste agenda as a region last triennium, and now we're actually going to be able to do something. So I don't want to just investigate how this money could be spent. I want it spent. And some of the things that can be progressed apart from the resource recovery park is a method to deal with our organic waste, money to empower our communities to introduce local waste management solutions. And once we've done our trial, actually implementing some of the solutions. So I'm so happy today that this is being moved. So thank you so much to Councillor Foon, Councillor Day and Councillor Fitzsimons.
Councillor Sparrow, I see your hand up. Are you speaking against it?
Oh, yes.
You are speaking against it.
Well, the only part I'm questioning, and perhaps I'm not necessarily supporting, is the increase in the landfill fees, because we keep increasing the fees, and part of what we want to do is to change behaviour in terms of wanting to reduce waste, and I can understand that and am supportive of that, but I do question whether increasing the fees as we're proposing doing will actually have any significant bearing on changing that behaviour. I think the behaviour that it might change is in terms of people taking their rubbish to the landfill. They might, the more we raise fees, the more they're likely to, and it does happen, to dispose of it elsewhere. So yeah, I do have a bit of a concern over that it might discourage people from taking their rubbish to the landfill and discarding it in places where we don't want them to be discarding it. So yeah, I'm a bit unsure as to whether I'll support number 17 or not.
Councillor Foon, right of reply.
Thank you all for your feedback. Jill, thank you for acknowledging the recycling. I can say that this has been a really challenging couple of weeks knowing this was coming up, putting this together with all the emails I have had from so many people about recycling. I am so sorry if I haven't got back to you. Please know that I care so deeply. So it just shows how much Wellingtonians really do care, and they really do want to do the right thing. And this is an opportunity to help guide that again. Thank you, Councillor Sparrow. I totally respect your bringing up that the fee change could have some inconsequential, some changes that we might not have thought about. But the government is about to put up the levy by quite a significant amount, because globally this has been the thing that has inspired change and has inspired other uses for our resources. And just if you can look, I'll send you through that report again to show you how that New Zealand is the worst. So the system we have of taking the just being able to landfill is not working for our environment and for reducing our waste. So yes, And I think the residents in Brooklyn wouldn't be too unhappy if there weren't so many cars trucking down to the landfill. So yeah, I think they'll be up for it. But that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Foon. Now, does anybody want to take anything separately? Councillor Sparrow, did you want any part of it taken separately? No? Okay, we'll put it all as one. Okay, so if you want to vote. One more.
Councillor Wolf.
One to go.
Okay, it's unanimous.
Okay, right, cool. Thank you. Right, well done, Councillor Foon. Right, okay. Two more amendments. Councillor Fitzsimons, you're next up.
Yeah, cool. I've just got the amendment that was circulated is around the council officers amending the council's procurement strategy and policy to reflect the council's desire to focus more on social, environmental and local principles, and then bring a draft of that back to the Strategy and Policy Committee, and also to identify specific initiatives, projects that will demonstrate these procurement principles and report back to the council within 3 months. And I think that's a very usefully active amendment, and really it's attempting to bring in the concept of social procurement, which is the intentional purchase of goods or services that result in positive change. And I want to acknowledge Councillor Calvert, who originally was going to second this amendment, but now she has her own, so she can't. But really these amendments are about looking at our procurement policy so that it's not just about price, that we put environmental, social and local principles at the heart of the decision making this council makes about procurement. And just finally, we've added in there another amendment, which I don't think will be controversial, but just to make it really clear that, and I've got the library portfolio, that decisions about the future of the Central Library will be dealt with in a report that's coming to council in May 2020, and that the urgency with which Wellingtonians expect us to act about the future of the Central Library will be reflected in that draft annual plan. And I know that I'm not alone among councillors in really wanting to see this future of the Central Library really prioritised by this council, and I think we need to make it really clear in our draft annual plan that we do have that commitment. In fact, Councillor Matthews is going to see that.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzsimons. I'm just going to check before I go to you, Councillor Matthews, whether people are happy to accept these. Is that that's a no, Councillor Pannett?
I just wanted to ask the mover whether she'd be prepared to just put in that we consider this an urgent and high priority issue, as she said in her speech. Would you be able just to change the wording?
I'd love to put that in.
Which one are we referring to in which
both
place?
But the library, I'm assuming.
That's what you referred to?
That's the intention of bringing it forward, is to just give it some urgency in the draft.
Okay, yep, well, it's a statement of fact. All right,
Dean?
Councillor Young, are you happy to accept or not?
So I just want to ask, where does this fit in with the fact that don't we have a requirement from the government to go for the best value for money?
Okay, so we got quick. I think you have to say that it has to be dealt with in terms of right of reply. I think, or you might want to ask that as a question of officers.
I suppose I'm really asking it as a question of officers, because I agree this is how I live my life, but you know, are we going against what we've been told by government?
So, Barbara, you might want to give us some advice on the amendment. We did say that we were going to have a procurement policy come up to us very soon. That's on our forward program. So this is basically just, as I said, a statement of what we're doing anyway.
Look, yes, Mayor, we have discussed this, and I'm perfectly comfortable with this amendment. It was on my mind anyway that it is timely for us to review our procurement policy in the light of the government's new charter and principles for procurement. And now, in the wake of COVID-19, I think even more important to take into account those questions around social procurement, our approach to procurement, the well-being of the city, and how we can work towards doing some things differently.
Okay, You happy, Councillor Young?
Through you,
okay.
Mayor. Sorry, just and sorry, just to clarify the other part of the amendment. Just want to be clear about the expectations around that we will bring back the implications of that report in recommendation 25, and the implications of that will be incorporated in the annual plan. That's the implications means the implications of the report, depending on what decision was made out of that by council, that may in fact invoke an LTP amendment. So what that I just want to be clear about what the process might be after that. The implications will be in the annual plan, but there may be other implications after that, just to be clear.
Okay, thank you. Right, are people happy to accept these? It looks like it. Okay, done. Right, we can move on to the next amendment, which I think the last one, which is Councillor Calvert.
Can we just get that up just to see? Thanks. I think I think 21 and 22 are duplicated, so it's just, yeah. Thank you. All right. Thank you all. This is really just about providing a little bit more information in our draft annual plan going out. If you look at the pages in the first section 1, which do discuss about COVID-19, there's very much a focus on our organisation rather than our city and the impacts on our city. And whilst we might want to distinguish this as being a budget for the council, a lot of people look at us about in terms of the city as a whole. And in terms of, we've had a lot of good information out there that's readily available that we can include into this document to give people a sense of a broader context of the real impact of COVID-19 on our city. And I'll refer to the documents that we've already received, but perhaps they haven't been tabled appropriately. But we heard from the arts, creative and hospitality sector a couple of weeks ago, and with their concerns about the COVID-19 and what that's doing, and they came up with ideas to help support the recovery of our city, asking us to provide jobs through the maintenance and upgrade of civic venues, helping to save independent venues, retaining funding to allow the sector to carry on developing and staging live and digital content. And saying that we know our creative cities recovery is not a sprint but a marathon. And we've also heard from the Chamber of Commerce today. They've just completed a survey, and in summary, they're saying that a storm is brewing in the post-COVID environment, and businesses are unable to ready themselves for it due to the previous lockdown conditions. Many businesses believe things will get much worse before they get better. And we've also had information today from around our CBD district in terms of retail, and looking at where our customers come from and the impact on that group, and saying that Wellington's independent, creative and artisan businesses differentiate our city. They are also our most fragile currently. And 20% of our marketplace has disappeared. Our regional and local market must now be immediate targets. Have a replacing spend from national and international consumers will not be easy. So this is about painting the picture for our city, for our residents, for the people who will read the annual plan, and for people who probably will only read the first few pages of our annual plan, because whilst we may go through it in detail, we know most people, if they do read it, will just read those first few pages, even if we do create some sort of summary. So this is about providing a more contextual perspective on what is impacting our city. And for transparency is relying on the information that we've provided, acknowledging the inputs that we've had from the chamber, from the arts sector, and from a retail perspective, so that we can use that information. And so tabling those documents today enables them to form part of the official record of this meeting. And so, as I said, it's not actually asking for any money or any more resources. So it's actually just about tidying up and helping to tidy up our annual plan and ensure that we do have voices heard, and noting that the Chamber of Commerce and First Retail would have been here today if they were able. And as you know, we did hear from Meg Williams from the arts sector last week, but unfortunately we never tabled her document at the time. So I'll leave that as it is.
Thank you, Councillor Calvert. Now, just to be clear, so the document you are seeking to table is the one that we all had circulated to us from Meg Williams and signed by about a dozen or so other entities.
That's right, because it was never formally, it didn't become part of our records because it wasn't formally tabled.
Okay, thank you. My question to you, are there any questions regarding the amendment? Councillor Fitzsimons, and just tell me sort of a question of the mover or question of the officers.
It's possibly a question of officers, but this concept of tabling, I haven't heard it used before and I don't recall it. Do you mean appending to the minutes, or is there a formal kind of standing order that I don't know about that allows for this?
So hang on, no, that is a question. That is a question of officers. I will ask STEM services because there is in standing orders the ability to table, but I can't recall the detail of what that standing order says in terms of our right to say yay or nay to that.
Thank you.
Your Worship, yes, councillors can table any document to the meeting, and I'll find the standing order, the one, but yeah, it's possible to table that document.
Okay.
For the meeting, and it will be in the minutes as well.
Yeah, no.
Is that a point of order process, or?
No, you are allowed to table. I just wanted to check that we have to accept the tabling, or whether that's what I just of Cyrus, if you can have a quick look to see if that's the case or not.
Thanks.
We'll just take a moment.
(16.7). Just 1 second.
Take your time.
So 16.7 says any member or chief executive or a person participating in a public participation or making an oral submission may table papers about any matter on the agenda at any meeting. All table papers at public meetings shall be considered public documents. Where a meeting is a public exclusive session, any table papers may not be disclosed.
And is there anything there, Cyrus, about the ability to refuse to for the meeting to say, yep, we accept that, or we don't accept it?
There is no ability to refuse, so any member can table any document.
Okay, that's pretty clear. So I think that's a given there. I think the documents do have to be relevant and in order as well, which I think this one clearly is both. Okay, so are people happy to accept Councillor Calvert and Young's amendment? Councillor Panner, you have a question? You're not, or you're not happy to accept it?
Yeah, I'd just like to speak briefly to it.
Okay, well in that case, I'll go to the seconder then.
Thank you.
Seconder, right.
So I'll speak very briefly. I hope by now you realise that I am very concerned about what lies ahead of us in this economic Armageddon. But I thought I would just say to you that, to sum it up, as I lead the arts and culture portfolio, I'll give you a New Zealand cultural reference which really spells out where I think we're at, which is the wonderful Bruce Mason play, The End of the Golden Weather. And that is where we are now. That's why I have pleasure in seconding this, because I want people to understand the ramifications of all our decisions. That's it.
Thank you. Councillor Pennant.
So thank you, Councillor Calvert, for raising this. Look, it was just really a point around what weight we give to particular groups. Of course, I'm happy to listen to First Retail or the Chamber of Commerce, but we also did have Generation Zero, for example, coming today, and I think they have important things to say. And I guess I saw an earlier version of your email, so it'd just be good to hear your response and write a reply that, you know, COVID cut across the well-beings, and I guess part of some of our concern will be that actually if we the response to COVID should be protecting those well-beings. So I guess I just want to make sure that we send a clear message to the whole city that everyone's views are important wherever you might come from, and that we will act collectively in the best interests as we can. I also note, somewhat surprisingly, that you voted against the amendment to direct, after we'd heard from Ms. Williams, to direct some of their spending requests to the City Recovery Fund. That was, like in fact, I had wanted to put some money towards them, but just because of affordability reasons chose not to. But they very clearly came with a request for funding. And they said that that's what they needed from us. And I'm certainly happy if we could find some savings anywhere to put some more money in. Kia ora.
Councillor Fitzsimons and Councillor Condi.
Do you mind just putting the amendment up on the screen?
Thanks, Cyrus.
Yeah, I'm very happy with the tabling of documents, and it doesn't sound like we have any ability not to be anyway, but I think it's useful because there were a number of things, and particularly in that letter from Meg Williams, that I do want to see implemented, and some of them are things that are not in our COVID response package. For example, the reference Councillor Calvert made to steps the council may need to take in relation to saving independent venues. So I do support that. Just in terms of the First Amendment, I think that officers and councillors actually have worked incredibly hard to make sure that this draft annual plan does respond to the impacts of COVID-19 and also tries to take into account some of the likely future impacts of COVID-19. So I do think that as much as we know at this stage, we have already made those very, very proactive and practical steps in that direction. So I'm not really inclined to support the first one, because I do think that based on what we know now, we have considered that. And of course, these things will come out in the engagement process. That's the point of it. We'll get an updated view from business and residents about the impact of COVID-19, and I think we can reflect that in the final decisions that we make.
Thanks, Councillor Fitzsimons. Councillor Condi.
Thank you. I'm happy to support the first one. I think it's just an editorial change, and I'm not too concerned from that point of view. The second one, I'm just a little bit concerned. So it sounds like we can table documents. I feel like this amendment goes slightly beyond tabling it, saying agreeing that we will take it into consideration in our annual plan. And I mean, at this point, we've had this suggestion that we can simply take these into account as we would any other feedback that we're going to have during the consultation period. So I guess I'd like sort of a sense of the meaning of the motion from Councillor Calvert about is the intention of this amendment to give any particular extra weight to these documents over and above, for example, the public participants that we've had today, or any other consultation that we're likely to receive over the next few weeks? Or are we simply tabling these documents for our consideration, which I have, of course, no problem with, and the standing orders allows for?
Cyrus, can you put the words up again, just so we can see them? And Councillor Calvert, you might want to, that's because that was a meaning of the motion type question, so you might want to respond to that, please. You need to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Councillor Condi. The amendment is not intended to give any preference over one group over another. If somebody makes a public participation and submits some documents or a PowerPoint presentation, that is automatically added as an attachment to the agenda normally. So that's there as part of the record. And in terms of the information in these letters, it's just there just to be considered. Our annual plan, our draft annual plan, refers to our pandemic response. As yet, we're still forming the whole recovery response. So this is to aid officers in ensuring that they've got you know, some of the relevant information. I'm sure they'll have other sources as well, and feedback. But that's as we're working through that recovery plan, it's ensuring that there are some of these views being considered as well.
Thanks. Councillor Day.
I feel that the first amendment doesn't really add anything. I think it leaves officers probably looking at it going, well, what do you want us to include? How long is a piece of string? You could go a long way with what you say is going to be a potential further impact, but I feel that the document at this stage with also the preamble by the Mayor will cover some of the concerns and the challenges around the situation that we're in, and I think that's enough. The second, so number 22, I'm concerned that we're saying it will be considered for the annual plan when both councillors Calvert and Young have said that they don't want to see any more spending. It seems a very funny expectation that we could be able to squeeze something in. The reality is there will be things in those letters that we probably have already identified in the document. So those things are already in there, but the things that aren't, we're going to be really struggling to know how we can actually acknowledge that properly through the annual plan anyway. I think realistically, yes, the long-term plan, totally agree. Very happy for that to be there, but not the annual plan. I think that's just setting really an unrealistic expectation of what officers will be able to achieve in a very short period of time, and also we don't want to see extra spending. So I'm not going to be supporting either of those.
Councillor Foon, Councillor Wolf, and Deputy Mayor as well. Yeah, okay, right. Councillor Foon.
Thank you, Councillor Calvert and Young. Like, I guess the question I have around the first part is, to me, it's COVID-19, but I think from what we've heard from our groups this morning, that climate change is just got as much weight in terms of the impact. One's very here and now, but one is brewing. And so I would be happy to support that amendment if we could also put climate change in there as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Foon. Councillor Wolf.
Yes, thanks, Councillor Calvert and Councillor Young. I will be supporting this. You know, I really believe that in some cases we are too rigid, and particularly at this time, I think that what Councillor Calvert and Councillor Young have sought to do is to add some flexibility. I normally at this time remind people that this is a consultation document, and I ask people to engage with us. And I think that as much flexibility at this time, and particularly with both COVID-19 and climate change issues, we need that amount of flexibility to be able to come back on June the 30th or 31st and make our decisions and not preclude people actually being able to deliberate and consult with us.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, look, I'm not sure that I think either of these adds a lot. I feel that, you know, obviously COVID is going to be a big part of the preamble and the introduction, as is going to be resilience, climate change and earthquake strengthening and everything else. I think it almost shows a lack of faith that in fact that would be done anyway. And to some degree, I feel the same about the second one. It shows, why would we be saying this? Of course, when people come to us with information, we take account of it. I mean, to actually have to say that we do, I think, is almost implying that we wouldn't. So I just think these don't add a lot, and I'm not quite sure why we would be wanting to include them formally.
Do we have anyone else? Councillor Rush.
Yeah, thanks. From my point of view, this is simply trying to get some documents that were omitted from the official record on the official record. I don't think it does anything more. That's particularly paragraph, I think it's still 21. And in paragraph 20, I do think that there is a place for scenarios planning, because we don't know where we're going at the moment. Every day is a different day. And I think it would be helpful to the public to see some sort of thinking around what the so-called black hat situation looks like, and what is the most optimistic sort of pathway look like, and of course what's in the middle. So, and I think that then gives a bit of context for the rest of the document, so I think it would improve it. So I really don't, we've discussed before, and I made representation that I felt that some of Councillor Pannett's amendments were already effectively in the document, and nevertheless went along with most of her amendments. So on that spirit, I would suggest that we accept these amendments as well.
Anyone else? Look, I love these sort of amendments, and we've had a couple of them where they are sort of trying to put words into a document, which whether they'll have a significant impact or not, I'm not sure. But I think all Councillor Calvert is trying to do here, Councillor Calvert and Councillor Young, is simply to invite some looking at the editorial. Now, if there's ability for the Chief Executive and I to do minor editorial amendments, and if we don't think there's enough said about COVID, we can certainly do that. I think in terms of putting a document on the record, I mean, Meg Williams or any one of those people could come along tomorrow, well, not tomorrow, but next week, and say, here's a document. And can you please put it into the record, which I think is all Councillor Calvert's doing, because this was simply emailed to us rather than done in any other way. And I mean, all the documents which any of the submitters came along today and presented to us, they will all be appended to the record of this meeting. And I think all Councillor Calvert is doing is saying, hey, can we add another document to the record of this meeting? And I think, given, I can't remember exactly who had their signatures attached to it, but from memory, it was a significant portion of our arts sector, and I think the likes of, obviously Tawhiri, the ballet were in there. I think a significant representatives of our retail sector and I can't see that at this distance, our retail sector and our hospitality sector. And I guess if you say no to it, I'm not quite sure what kind of message that's sending to those sectors. It's probably not the most friendly one. And I guess what I would say is that, and I think, I can't remember who said it, the climate, I think it was you, Councillor Foon, said, climate change is important, it's brewing. Absolutely get that. But these people were coming to us saying that our industries, our sectors are in danger of, well, extinction. They are potentially a lot of businesses going out of existence. The people who support those businesses, those are our people. Those are the people who ultimately we hope will be in a position to be able to support the kind of things which we've been talking about earlier today. If we don't have those, if we don't have a dynamic central city, all the rest of the things which we want to do, we're not going to be able to afford to do them, because we've got nobody who's going to be paying the rates. 45% of our, or 47% I think it is, of our rates are paid by the business sector. And the business sector works because our CBD works, our region works because our CBD works. If we don't have that, we haven't got very much. That's what pays. That's what allows us to do all the things we try and do. So to me, these are just a few words to effectively act collegially in support of those really precious sectors. We talk about being the arts and culture capital. There's the arts sector, the culture sector, which has said to us, please, here's a letter, try and do some stuff with it. What we do with it is another matter. But the one thing we do need to keep doing is to keep engaging with the business sector, with the arts and culture sector, so that we actually understand what they're going through at the moment. And I know that Councillor Calvert is doing that. I know that I'm doing that. I know that Councillor Young is doing that. I'm sure others of you are doing that as well. But that is so important, because we can't understand what they're going through if we don't communicate with them and if we don't listen to what they come back with. And that letter effectively was a plea for help from those sectors. And I think to kind of not put on the record is a little bit curmudgeonly, I think probably will be the word I would use. Councillor Day.
Just got a quick question of you, Mayor Foster, because what you're saying is it's essentially just tabling the letters, but the amendment says more than that. So I'm just wondering if we can see the amendment again, because it doesn't just say tabling it, it says that we're going to consider for the annual plan and the next long-term plan.
Well, clearly, in my view, you can't, we are going out with the draft. This is the last amendment we've got, so the draft is what the draft is now. And I would imagine those sectors will come back, but you just put it on the record and it's just something you can think about. Okay, right of reply, Councillor Calvert.
Thank you, and thank you everybody for your feedback. I know some of it was all very similar, so I won't necessarily call out, refer to a particular councillor. But Councillor Panner, you said my amendment had changed, and really the number 21, I really just softened it. I didn't want this to be an onerous task for officers to do, because I initially did call for scenarios. So what I have done is softened it, and really just to provide, as I said, that contextual information that is going to help our people of our city actually sort of have a broader understanding of what our city is facing, especially if we look at some of the economic factors about the expected unemployment rates, about the expected drop in our economy. So really it's just about providing that more contextual information. I didn't want to get into a detail here about specifying exactly what words should be in here. Very happy to work with the Mayor and the Chief Executive. Ultimately, as per these recommendations, they have the final say. So I really just want to see a broader context in there. If you look at the document at the moment, the COVID-19 is probably only roughly about half a page. So there's not a lot of information there in that first section about it. And in terms of 22, look, it's I use the word considered. I'd be happy to change that to something slightly different, but I actually can't think of anything. It's not asking to do anything specific. It's just asking it to be considered for the upcoming annual plan. So not for this draft. It's actually just something to be factored in as part of any submission. Having said those, now that once the draft annual plan goes out, those particular groups may want to come back with something more specific about it. But this is just a really very broad perspective on how they see the economy tracking, rather than specific action points other than what that we've had from the arts sector. And I think somebody remembered about a vote that I might have voted against. I actually can't recall it. So happy to look at that, but yeah. So I'm just looking for your support.
Thank you, Councillor Calvert. Okay, we will vote. Put them both together. Does anybody want either of them taken separately?
Yeah.
Okay. The first one. So if you can, there. Right. So 21. Three to go. Okay, that's past 10-5. Can you just give us the 5 against?
Yep. Councillor Pennant, Councillor Paul, Councillor Matthews, Councillor Day, and Councillor Fitzsimons.
Thank you. Okay, and 22.
Councillor Wolf, Councillor Rush, Councillor Day, Councillor Fitzsimons.
Two more, one more.
Councillor Rush.
Okay, it's passed. Who were the 13-2s? The 2 against were?
Councillor Pennant and Councillor Paul.
Okay, thank you. Right. Thank you. That is all the amendments. That takes us back to the substantive. Does anybody wish to speak on the substantive, if anybody can remember what it was? Councillor Matthews, Councillor Wolf.
All right, am I up?
Yes.
Great. I just wanted to briefly speak because I was not able to speak in because we didn't know that I was going to cover in the procurement. But I just wanted to particularly to mention the living wage, and that this obviously that we're at a time where low paid workers on the front line. There's never been you know, the great sort of community support for those people that are doing work and often on low pay. So just to outline, if there's anybody out there in the world still watching, that this annual plan includes provision for us to maintain our living wage accreditation status in terms of lifting our directly employed staff up to the 2021 living wage rate of $22.10 an hour, and also that about moving those last few contracts up to the living wage. So we're still continuing to keep our commitment to value our lowest paid staff and to move those people up to the living wage rate. And just wanted to add that in terms of that procurement argument, that I would argue that the living wage is going to be a very strong factor there, and that wanted to add that there are 900 people at the Newtown Festival, which it seems like 100 years ago that we were gathered with a huge number of people like that there, actually signed up in support of us making a living wage city. So very strong community support for us to consider the living wage as part of our procurement, and to continue to sort of lead on fair pay in the city. So I just wanted to add those comments.
Thank you, Councillor Matthews. We've got several now. Councillor Wolf, Day, and the Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thanks, Your Worship. I again hark back to that. This is a consultation document. And between now and June the 30th, we have the ability to make cost efficiencies. There are revenue opportunities that could be out there, and also other initiatives that we as councillors can work together with officers and also members of our community. Our people are hurting. They are really, really hurting, and particularly landlords, retail hospitality, tenants, employees. There are a lot of people that are in desperate situations around the city at the moment and around the country as well. Economic resilience is the driver for everything else, and yeah, we can incorporate the climate change aspects and you know, bear in mind some of the social arts and recreational areas also. But we have to keep open-minded, and we have to keep working together to ensure that we get through this, and that we provide our city with resilience, not just at this moment, or not just at June the 30th, but for years to come. And I make a plea. Our central government is vital to partnering with us, as are our regional partners, including the other territorial authorities, and especially the media. I just want to encourage again Wellingtonians to engage, to get involved in this. This is the most important consultation document that the Wellington City Council has put out in 100 years. We need the feedback. We need people to tell us and help us to help our people. And I can't urge you enough to, as in a general sense, to be cognizant of the fact that we are not business as usual, and we're not going to be for quite some time. And therefore, let's get behind each other, let's work together. And we have worked collaboratively and cohesively in the main, but we do need to do better. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wolf. Councillor Day.
Kia ora anō. Tēnei take mihi nui ki ngā iwi mana whenua. I really just want to acknowledge the presence of mana whenua in our city. They were here before we were, and it's really important that they are an integral part of our way going forward. I just want to acknowledge and thank the officers for acknowledging my request to include some comments around the way that we will work with mana whenua going forward. It's in the document that we're working on, the memorandum of understanding, but I think it's really important that we reflect and acknowledge that when we talk about all of the documents, particularly things that we've talked about recently, projects and huge initiatives that we keep asking for mana whenua to be part of it with us and to engage early. But that means we actually need to build capacity in council to be able to do a good job of that. And at the moment, it's always a stretch, and we need to be really thoughtful of that. And I know that our officers are already looking at how we can do that. So I think it's important that it's reflected in the document. So we will have a statement on page 39 that says the council is in discussion with mana whenua partners about how best to build capability and capacity at a governance and operational level in order to improve how we work together. And there'll be a bullet point which says improve how we work together through implementing agreed governance and operational initiatives. There are many things we can do to do a better job, but we need to make sure that we're really focused on that. And mana whenua are telling us that they are keen to have those conversations with us. So I think it's really important to acknowledge that. And I would like to acknowledge that majority of our speakers today really acknowledge the importance of Te Tiriti o Waitangi and the way that we uphold that. And it means that we need to make deliberate moves and be proactive in the way that we do that. So I really want to thank and acknowledge staff for the work that they are doing and will be doing in the times ahead to develop our MOU, but more importantly to honour the relationships that's really important. Ngā mihi.
Thank you, Councillor Day. Deputy Mayor Free.
Look, I'm just taking my slot as a seconder of this piece of work.
It's been a long time.
Yeah, I just held back on it a little bit because I just wanted to see where we went with all our amendments. But really, basically, I just want to say that we've been on quite a journey with this document. We started off at around 9% rates. We considered 0%. We came up with a couple of options, around 5 and around 2. And I think we've landed in a reasonably good place. What we need now, and actually I want to pay tribute to our amazing staff, I have to say that, who have actually moved us into an online space to discuss all of this. And thank you, people like Cyrus, who have managed to manage our meetings, put up documents for us to look at, take them down again so that we can see each other, tutor us all in what it takes to go online, help our public to actually come online and participate. And just so much has happened to enable us to actually get to the point we're at. And we are on time. We will be going out with a plan. We will have time to have feedback on it. We will have time to reconsider it. And we will have time to actually, I believe, pass it by the 30th of June, which was our original deadline. And all of this in a COVID environment. So, you know, I think that sometimes I wish the Dom Post could actually come online and see how we actually interact. And see the engagement with everybody, taking time to thoughtfully consider other people's ideas, working out what they can and can't support, and the arguments forward coherently for that. You know, and you know, in a situation where I believe we're actually getting the best out of each other and the best for Wellington. So I toku, if that's the word, colleague Councillor Wolf. It's now up to Wellington to tell us what they think of what we've done. This isn't the end of it. The end of it is when the people get back to us and give us feedback, and we take that into account and we do our best with all of that put together. I'll probably leave it at that. I'm very confident in what we've done. There's lots there for people to comment on, to give us feedback on. You'll never make everyone happy, but if we have enough there so that people can accept that it's a good compromise all round, then I think we will have done well. Thank you to the Mayor. I think you've led us well during this time, and I think today showed that there is a true spirit of collaboration when we need to. We can get behind each other and actually get to a package that I think we'll all feel good about. So I know it sounds a bit self-congratulatory, but it has been quite a long process. And so that's all I need to say. Thanks to everybody, thanks to our staff, and thank you to the public.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Sarah Free, and thank you for your nice words. And it is almost like we've been through it twice. In terms of we were leading up to one draft annual plan, then going into a complete change and doing it again. Councillor Rush.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have heard from a number of groups around climate change, so I just wanted to focus the public's attention on one project that's buried away in page 41 called the Sludge Minimisation, Utilisation and Reclamation Facility. So that is a scope of work that Wellington Water have been budgeted and have been working on. They have to basically take our sludge and actually do something with it that's meaningful other than throw it in the landfill. So with my background in gas processing, I look at it as an opportunity. There's a resource there that can be made into biogas, which we can put into the national grid, or else we can make into electricity, or else we can take the residue and make it into fertilizer. So just as an update, Wellington Water have scoured international practices and found 21 different projects that might meet those requirements for the scope. That's the long list. They will develop a short list, which will be delivered to us in September with a briefing. If you want real meaningful action on reducing emissions, this project is it. It really will take methane that would otherwise vent into the atmosphere and actually turn it into something useful, and it will be a circle. So apples will be eaten, sewage will go into the plant and be released into the atmosphere, and CO2 is then taken by the apple tree. So that's the virtuous circle. So just wanted to put that as a heads up, but I also did want to balance the discussion, because not much science was presented this morning by any of the groups. I just wanted to reflect that actually the observations are showing that sea level rise is about the same as it was when my dad went to St. Pat's Town in the 60s. I'm also looking at a document that issued by the Ministry for Environment, Our Atmosphere and Climate 2017, that shows that there's no clear trend in annual rainfall. In fact, winter rainfall in Wellington has decreased. Looking at intense rainfall, they say for most of New Zealand, there's no clear evidence that intense rainfall events have changed between 1960 and 2016. For extreme wind, which is our storms, between 72 and 2016, the frequency and magnitude of extreme wind decreased at about 1/3 of sites. That one of them was Wellington. Hooray. This is also supported by, we had the visit from NIWA earlier this year, where that message on rainfall was corroborated, and similarly follows the Royal Society's report in 2016 that found that flood statistics do not show an increase in floods through time so far across New Zealand. So it's an important issue. It doesn't get a blank check though. We need to be measured, we need to be realistic, but I'm very energized with the Smurf project, as it's called. Also, we've joined the Hydrogen Association of New Zealand, because that will be a transport of the future in a zero carbon future. So I'm celebrating that as well. But I also echo the Deputy Mayor's comments on collaboration, and it'd be great if our iconic Dominion Post would get with the program and start supporting Wellington. I'm guessing they probably might have got back online by now.
Thank you, Councillor Rush. Okay, now I can see both Councillor Fitzsimons and Councillor Calvert with their hands up. The problem is you've already spoken.
About amendments.
No, when you move your amendment, you're speaking to the substantive, so you can't speak again. You need to check the standing orders. That's been the standing order since you were both elected.
It was the opposite.
No.
We do have new standing orders though.
Yeah, that hasn't changed.
I actually think we can, because sorry, Mayor, but I did question
with
this
officers. Yeah.
last year with the previous
sorry,
mayor.
hang on, wait, Cyrus.
Your Worship, yes, as long as they haven't spoken to the motion, even though they've moved an amendment, they can still speak to the motion.
Did we change that so that even if you are moving a motion, an amendment to the substantive, you can then speak separately to the substantive?
They moved an amendment, and it was carried, and it was became part of the substantive.
I want you to have a look at
the
the standing order then, please.
Look, I'm not going to get hung up about it. I'm happy not to speak.
No, I just want to be clear that we didn't change something in the last lot that I've missed. Sorry, can you just check through that, please?
Yeah, sure.
Are we very concerned about time, Mr. Mayor?
Well, no, I'm concerned about doing things properly, though.
Okay.
I can hear my children.
I hope I still got some there.
The iPad's gone flat.
While waiting for that, is there anybody else who wishes to speak who hasn't already spoken?
We also have another paper.
We do.
Yep.
Yeah, we do. So we've got to get through that as well. Sarah, has you found it yet, or has anybody else from Dem Services found it?
There is this distinction is, I don't think it is in the standing orders that if you you can't speak to a substantive. It's so the as far as I understand, so the rule is if you've spoken to the motion, you can't move an amendment. But if you've moved an amendment, but later on you can speak to the substantive motion.
If we've changed that, we've changed it only recently.
No.
Because
that was my understanding, always the case.
Yeah.
I will ask my team to see if I'm
I
wrong.
think, with all due respect, I think the simplest thing is to let people speak, but just perhaps if we are be cognizant of time.
We will, yeah. Well, I do want to do this properly. I will let the two councillors speak, and then we will be done. But we will just circle back. And Cyrus, if you can just check while we are speaking, that would be helpful, because unless we've changed something, then we shouldn't be doing this. Councillor Fitzsimons, briefly.
I'm very bound to disappoint now. I really just wanted to acknowledge the commitment to investment in core water infrastructure, particularly around leaks and the roving crews, and just thank the community for their advocacy on that, and for the widespread support it's got throughout the community, but also among councillors, because I think it's an urgent and pressing issue, and I'm so pleased to see it so clearly laid out in this draft annual plan.
That was worth hearing. Councillor Calvert. Again, briefly.
Thank you. Look, there's one thing I just wanted to point out, that the Chief Executive has committed to find $3 million in savings as part of this. So any sort of thinking we're going to get any more savings, it's really going to impact on our service levels. So, and that has been factored into the 4.95% rates increase already. So, and I think there's a hard task ahead of it when we don't have to, when we're not including any reduction in services. And then I just wanted to acknowledge Liz Mellish. You know, Liz is a powerhouse in her own right. And but she speaks with knowledge, because the businesses that she is involved with cover the tertiary sector, cover hospitality, cover housing, cover tourism, and also she's mana whenua. And I think it was really helpful to hear her views, and I just really want to thank her for giving her time up at short notice to provide a very cohesive and comprehensive insight into what it's like here in Wellington in the business sector.
Thank you, Councillor Calvert.
Thank you.
That gets us to the end. Councillor Condi, you haven't spoken, so away you go. Not to the substantive anyway.
Exactly.
So I know you.
Very quickly, I just wanted to acknowledge that when we look at all of the amendments as they've been taken together now as part of the substantive, what we've done today is by increasing the waste fees, but we're going to be recovering up to maybe a little bit more than $3 million, which is $3 million less than we're not going to have to borrow for paying for our services. So that leaves our ratepayers, you know, better off in a better financial position. Now, alongside that, we have agreed to some additional spending of not quite $500,000, and due to some accounting technicalities, we can't directly offset one or the other. But when you take these as together, what we've done, I think, is a really great balance between making some progress on some really important long-term issues around the environment and climate change, while actually being financially prudent and improving the overall borrowing position of the council. So I'm really proud of the package of amendments that then sit with the rest of the substantive where we've managed to come to a great compromise and can actually deliver something to our residents that I think offers a great balance between some progress and some financial responsibility during this unprecedented crisis.
Thanks, Councillor Condi. Anyone else? Okay, so in terms of right of reply, thank you all for what has now been 2 hours, or almost 2 hours of debate, and for the collaborative way in which you've dealt with that. But we are in extraordinary times. We do face extraordinary challenges, and I think that some of the comments which have been made, I think particularly by Councillors Calvert and Young, have sort of very pointedly made that comment that some of our ratepayers, some of our business community, some of their employees are going to be really, really struggling at the moment. It's going to be really, really interesting to see what feedback we get through this process. We've cut back from where we were going to be a couple of months ago if we'd gone down the track that we were originally going to go down. Essentially, a lot of that has been because we pushed things out to next year in terms of paying for them. But it'll be really interesting to see what feedback we get from our community. And for those of you for whom this is a first annual plan, in fact, for all of us, we've got to be, listen carefully. We are required to do that. We're required to go into this with an open mind. And the one thing you can be utterly certain of is that when people say the community thinks this, the community doesn't generally think one thing. The community has a lot of different voices, and they don't always agree with each other. And that is the beauty of democracy. And we've got to weigh all of those things up when we come to final conclusions in the latter part of June. I think the other thing to say is that we are progressing a lot of really exciting things in this plan. We've added some more to that. And so we've got to be looking at what we do now to try and mitigate the immediate impacts on our community as much as we possibly can. It'll be a question of whether we've gone far enough or haven't. We've also got to look at the recovery and how we try and work with our community to try and build ourselves bigger, better, stronger. It's going to take a while. This is going to be a really, really challenging process for us all. We've seen some pretty dire economic and job predictions, and we're going to have to be listening very, very carefully to our community about how they are doing, because we don't know everybody's circumstances, but we know that a lot of them, it's going to be very, very tough, and we are going to need to be listening carefully to them about what we can best do to try and respond to their needs as much as we can. Obviously, we're a relatively small entity compared to government. Government's going to be doing most of the heavy lifting there, but we need to also be paying attention to what they do. But the other thing is we also need not only to be thinking about the immediate recovery, but to be thinking about the long term. And what was already in our plan, and we've added to that a little bit as well today, is very much about the long term as well, and about trying to make sure that we have a fantastic city, is how we rebuild that, how we come out of this, and how we make that city even bigger and better and an even more exciting, vibrant capital city. And that's what we really are all about. Final thing I wanted to say is we haven't done the job when we finish with this today. We tasked the Chief Executive to look for efficiencies, to look for savings within the organisation. We'll see how much people want us to do of that with the feedback we get. But we also tasked ourselves, you'll remember, to help her. So, if you've got some creative thinking, and there'll be creative thinking in our community as well, then let's, I can see the thumbs up there from Councillor Foon. We've got a role to play in this as well, and that's part of being good governors and working with our management team. So look, thank you all again. I would hope that I'm going to be able to put the lot as one. We've all expressed our views on the amendments as they've gone through, and I really will be disappointed if we actually have to go through that again, but we can just do it all as one, because ultimately it's a package. We've expressed our views on the way through, and now I think what we need to do is get out, go and talk to our community, or actually even more importantly, go and listen to our community and hear what they have to say about what we've put in front of them. And I just want again to say thank you to all of you for today, and thank you, Barbara, to you and all of your team for the fantastic work that has gone on in putting this together. So we really appreciate that. And now we will go to Paki. Yeah.
Your Worship, just 1 second. So this is the standing order 2113. So from this, it can be conclusion is that, so if When an amendment is carried, the motion becomes a substantive motion, and those who haven't spoken to the original motion, which was the one that had been recommended by officers, then they can still speak.
Thank you for that. Okay, cool.
And
Cyrus?
I will, you're welcome. And also I will now share the substantive motion. And so number 13 of the original motion was replaced by Councillor Pannett's amendment. And that is 13, 14, 15. 14 was the original one, 15 Councillor Foon, 16, 17, 18, 19 Councillor Foon's amendment, 20, 21, 22 Councillor Fitzsimon's amendment, and 23, 24 Councillor Pannett's amendment.
Right, cool.
Councillor Calvert's amendment. Sorry.
Yep. Right. Okay. Good. Right. We all happy to vote now? So let's vote.
Mayor Foster.
Sorry, you need Councillor Calvert.
Yeah, look, can I just clarify? So if we vote for them to speed up the process, that we're not then quoted as voting unanimously for all these changes. The word unanimously is the issue.
Councillor, I would hope that we will vote unanimously to go out with an annual plan, but we've already expressed your views on each individual section. We don't.
Thank you.
Advice. Yeah. And I certainly won't be misrepresenting anybody in anything we say.
Councillor Paul, Councillor Sparrow, Councillor Foon, Councillor O'Neill, Councillor Paul, you have clicked go faster. Yes, okay. Unanimous.
Yes, sorry.
We're going fast.
Right. So
I think
thank you
that
very
was
much, councillors.
Yeah.
So well done. Good job. Okay, that takes us to that's the annual plan, or the draft annual plan. Now it takes us to the LGFA paper, which, if you want to call that up to in terms of the recommendations, please, Cyrus.
Sure.
Right. Okay, look, I'm pleased to move this. We had a extensive series of questions which were asked the other day about the detail of this, but essentially you will understand it's about CCO financing. The protection, which I think most of you wanted, was to make sure that if any CCO was to be accessing these funding arrangements, that they would be required to get our approval to do so, which I think was the most important thing. I think Councillor Condi, that was the question, in fact, which you in particular asked. So I am happy to move this. I think we are kind of late in the piece on this compared to some other councils, but I think we basically either have the choice of doing this or not being part of the agency, which would be very, certainly a very retrograde step. So I'm moving, and seconded by, thank you, Councillor Rush. Do you wish to say anything, or does anybody wish to say anything? Councillor Pannett.
Thank you, Mayor Foster. Look, I'm going to vote for this, but I think just want to remind everyone that we just need to be really careful that CCOs do need to follow the direction of the councils that own them, follow the political direction, and we do need to be careful about how this basically arrangement will work. There are opportunities for cracks between the two organisations if we're talking about Wellington Water, and of course the level of money that we may need may be very, very substantial. So we're going to have some big conversations about that. But look, I understand that this is mostly to do with other councils, not ours. So fine to go through. Thank you.
Thank you. No other. Okay. Yeah, so look, just quickly, Councillor Pannett, thank you. Yes, they will need to follow our political direction. Of course, I would make the observation that in the process which we've just been through in the last 3 or 4 months, in fact, is still carrying on at the moment. Wellington Water, of course, had to incur costs. I know it wasn't about borrowing, but had to incur costs effectively on our behalf, and we had to then come behind them to support them, which is, of course, what we had said we were going to do. But they had to start that process straight away. But yes, I think this is likely to become a bigger issue, particularly if there is reform in the water sector, which we don't know what the shape of that's going to look like at this stage. Okay, I'll put the recommendations.
Sparrow. That is unanimous.
That's passed. Okay, well, thank you, councillors. That brings us to the end of the meeting. Thank you again for the way you've conducted yourselves. And officers, thank you very much again for the support that you've given us throughout this process. Really appreciate that. And just everybody have a great evening.
Cheers. Well done, guys. Another good week.
Karakia, your worship.